Okay, so that's it for that
Yeah.
section. We did have some things we wanted to touch on as well.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
So
I wrote some of these down just to keep myself up to date with everything that we're talking about. But
yeah,
also,
absolutely.
yeah, also,
Um, One thing I wanted to start off with the this more podcast heavy side of it was regrets versus no regrets. I don't know if that was in my notes when I sent it over to you. Sorry, um, but it's something I hear a lot and that I get a bit confused about. Sorry, let me turn off this music. Um, a lot of people mention that you shouldn't have regrets going through life, and I actually really disagree with that. I think it's good to have regret because it means that you've been actively making decisions and you've made those decisions for yourself along the way. I think I've probably got a new regret every day. Like maybe it's just a small thing, but like you know what I mean? I think it's good that
yeah.
I was in the situation where I got to have a choice where I could make a regret.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think I've heard a few people say that. They say I don't regret my past because I learnt from so many experiences. Like, or I
Yeah.
learnt from. There are people who probably do regret it, but they're also the types who don't think or attempt to change those things. Like they relive past traumas or repeat. You know what I mean? They almost have this destiny where they repeat past mistakes because they don't address it. But
Yeah, exactly.
it depends on what people you like. There's yeah. It depends on what people do. Where like I feel like almost sometimes you talk to other people and you don't have to walk their path, but if you're both open enough to both be vulnerable to each other, you can often chat to that other person and find out and filter out some of the mistakes they've made. So hopefully you don't have to make them for yourself, and you
Yeah.
can do the same for them. Like one of my friends is in a quite a I won't say his name and all, but quite a toxic relationship, and I kind of said like he's kind of came up the other side, and he was like, I don't know why I wasted my time, and I said, well, it's not wasted time if you can help people with their mental health
Yeah.
and or meet someone who's in a similar situation. You now have something where you can relate. Even like anyone who's tried to quit smoking before, it's really easy to kind of like say, oh, just quit smoking if you've never
Yeah.
done it before. But if you've quit smoking before, you can kind of help other people with that, like the mentality and some of the things you can do and some of the things you can adopt and changes to
Yeah.
try and get yourself into a position where it is a little bit easier. But
Yeah, I
yeah, no,
definitely agree
I
with that.
definitely agree. Yeah,
I would say for me it's more my line of thinking is like it's good that you've created a memory and sometimes it's funny and or just fun to think back on something and you're like damn I regret that stupid ass thing I did. And it's a fun memory, but if you got that thing perfectly right, it'd be such a boring nothing memory. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't
yeah,
I've got one in my head at the moment where it was raining for a few days at school, so the ground was quite muddy, and we were running around playing tips or something at school. This is when I was at the public school over at Newcastle,
right.
and a few of my friends they got in trouble. The teacher said, you know, sit down on the bench for the whole of lunch because you've been running around. We told you not to run around during the mud. Um, and then another friend started running around behind the teacher and like he slid in the mud and got in trouble because he fucked up and the teacher saw him running. And then I thought, okay, why not? At this point, and started running around behind the teacher. And every time they turned, I'd run to the other side.
Yeah.
So they couldn't see who it was. Eventually, as I was dodging and weaving, I slid and just got covered in mud. I regretted that, but don't get me wrong. Like I did regret it, but it was such a fun memory. Like it's almost not a regret. Like I like that I regret it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think so, and I think it's easy because, or not easy, but it's very easy to fall into the trap as well of like there was this book I really enjoyed. It you might really like it. It's called The Art of Making Memories, and it's this guy he just studies with a team on how like people what memories stand out to people the most towards the end of their lives with geriatrics and things like that
Right.
in their lifetime. What made their life feel longer? What are their regrets? And just interviews them with those types of philosophical questions. What do you wish you did more of? What do you wish you did less of?
Yeah.
And I think one thing that people do regret, and there's different types. There's some people who they make a mistake and they go, oh, that wasn't too bad. Like, I stuffed something up and this isn't the end of my life. Like, you know what I mean? I can still
Yeah.
come back from this and make more mistakes and learn more and continue to grow. But there are other people as well who they almost regretted not continuing to go down that path of making more mistakes. So they'd make a
Yeah.
mistake, maybe it didn't totally take off, and then they just kind of recoiled and removed themselves from situations where that could happen again. And it's like, I understand it as a trauma response, but
Yep.
yeah, I think it's different people can kind of take away from those situations in very different ways. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree though. Like, so, and one of the things they said in this book, I sometimes go around in circles, meandering a bit,
Mm.
but they said some of the memories that stood out was when they had something that was meant to go to plan and something went wrong. So maybe they were on the trip on their way to the drive-in as a family, and their car broke down, and it
Yeah.
was like they still get to the drive-in, but they had to have like they had to kind of be creative in a way to figure out a way to get there really quickly. And there were some
Yep.
kind strangers who managed to come in and different things. Yeah, go slightly incorrectly in a different way to what we planned, but like it makes it more memorable in the long
Yeah.
run. Like,
I
yeah,
I agree. I think, like I said, like I make regrets every day, and I remember, say, to my first business, which was the cleaning business. I remember, one, I regret that business because it kind of got nowhere, but I regret not taking more opportunities. But in that regret, I still have learnt so much of, okay, let's learn to take more opportunities as they come moving forward in life. There's jobs I regret not taking when they were offered to me. But it really, part of that is learning to take opportunities when they come, and learning something through the regrets that you've made in the past as well. I think it's very important, for me personally, at least.
yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
that's so true.
Now this one I've written down. I've kind of forgotten what the point you made was. Was streaming. I've written down streaming versus making memories. Did I get that right?
It may have been something along those lines. Yeah, I think I just kind of like spilt a giant voice memo onto you, and you kind of
It
like
was a
you were
long.
kind enough
Yeah.
to decipher what I said. I
It
think
was
it's like
like
yeah,
7 minutes or something.
7 minutes of just me rambling of ideas I could probably talk about, and then I kind of looked back on, and you'd written it like kind of written it into a semi-cohesive dot point system, and I was
Yeah.
like, I like that as themes now. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was one of the ideas I had. Like, so streaming versus making memories, and it was not necessarily to say there's anything wrong with streaming at
Mm.
all. Like, I was just saying it's quite interesting how we'll have different approaches to streaming, and I guess like I might even be the bad guy right now. Like, if some Twitch person heard this, they'll be like, "Oh, this guy's like one of the people who's trying to say you should stop eating junk food, but they're an ambassador for Coca-Cola," and it's like,
Right.
oh, I don't know if this is a bad. No, it's just the different mentalities, but
Yeah.
kind of like adopting, I guess, the world of streaming. And I would love to try and get into this. Like, I don't dislike the idea of it. It seems really cool.
Yeah.
I try to refer to my 20s as kind of like my able years, and then my
Yeah.
30s, 40s, and 50s, like, ahead of time. I've kind of had the idea that I'm going to allocate that for my idle years, and that doesn't mean that I'm not going to do nothing in my 30s, 40s, and 50s,
Yeah.
but I'll be physically less active or less able. So those will be the years where I do stay inside and have a lot of time to do
Yeah.
like Rochelle and I both have our things. Rochelle's is knitting and sewing,
Yep.
and like, well, she's kind of like entertained, and I'm the same. I say like my 20s is kind of like entertaining some of the hobbies that I'll probably love or that'll
Yeah.
be my
Like you mentioned,
passions in my 30s.
barbecuing.
Yeah, yeah, grilling and barbecuing. Like, that's a whole area where I'm like, I can't wait to get into being a grilling and barbecuing dude.
Yeah.
But see it as like something that I will be able to look forward to in my 30s and 40s and 50, and and I can still enjoy it now, but we don't really have the space for it. And there's a few things where I'm like, oh, like I I have other things that I know that I should be doing or could be doing, or the achievements, I guess. And I don't know, for me personally, like I have this map, and it's just marked out of all the places that I want to go to in New South Wales.
Yep.
And it just has maybe 200 places, like just all these
Right.
green dots
Far
all
out.
over all over the map. And it's like I kind of do it as a system where it's like until I do all of them, like, I want to yeah, I want to keep working on trying to get to as many of those spots. And I
Yeah.
jokingly call it my GTA map. I
Yep.
think the
No,
Central
no, I
Coast,
think
especially.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to
Sorry.
say, I want to counter argue. For me,
Sure.
it's a memory I make that is documented and logged. And not only that, but I can see statistics on that memory, and I can rewatch it in future years if I wanted to, or make videos out of it, or I'm sharing experiences I'm having online with other people, learning about new people as I go. Um, One thing I've been doing recently with my stream is playing with Japanese people, and
Right.
trying to learn some Japanese words and doing some stuff with them while I'm playing games with them. Um, so in a way, for me personally, I'm making memories at the same time as doing this thing. But I do get that it takes a long uh, amount of hours out of my day that I'm not going out and doing something physically. Um, but usually I'll be doing it in the evening anyway, when,
Right.
I've come home from doing something else in the day.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was actually going to say the nighttime thing. I think it's I think there can definitely be a healthy relationship, and I'm not saying that anyone does have an unhealthy relationship
Mm.
with streaming or anything like that. But yeah, no, I think there's room for definitely both. Like they can both
Yeah.
like you could almost the both can really be rewarding for each other if they're done in moderation. Where it's like as an example, like I kind of have a rule where it's like the face-to-face time will always take rank. So if it's like any friend is, if there's a friend that can be hanging out, it's like, all right,
Yep.
I'll go hang out with them. If there's someone who wants to, birthday, or if I want to, if like my family are in town or something up from northern New South Wales, I'll go hang out with them. If
That
I
makes
know,
sense.
even if there's a little market or something silly or cheesy, it's like I'll go to that over. Or if there's a local comedian or something, I'll go to that first. And
Yeah.
I think they both kind of play off of each other quite well. Like there's situations online that you could never make a joke about or never. And I'm not talking about like non PC. I'm talking about like physically. Like there's funny happenings or things that occur
Yeah.
over voice that would probably never happen in the real world, and vice versa. Like
Yep. Yeah, it
we're
goes
out.
both ways.
We have this friend Ethan. Really, you know Ethan.
Yep.
We were hanging out with him recently because we went out for dinner as a group of friends, and just some of the jokes that roll off so commonly that could never happen over mobile phone. So we're walking. We're trying to
Yeah.
find a bottle after going out for dinner in the city, and we came across one of those, and we have a joke with Ethan that his dad is like stupidly well off. So we say that like his dad, like you'll go to their house and like they have a vending machine and they'll put a $2 in and be like, do you want a drink? And you go, oh no thanks. And they go, okay, and they just throw the drink in the bin. Like they're those types of people. Like, we're always just going off with those jokes and stuff and running wild with them. But
Yeah.
we're trying to figure out the directory thing at the Westfield. And Ethan just walks up and goes, "It's okay, guys. My dad owns this place." And like walks up to it. It's so silly. But it's just one of those dumb things that could never happen in a virtual space. Like so
Yeah.
many jokes, so much material. And I think like sometimes streaming can be the path of less resistance. Like I don't have to. I can't imagine it'd be almost worse for girls, but I don't have to get my face. I don't have to do my hair. I don't have to. Some people do camera, to be fair, but like I don't have to
Mm.
put my new jacket on. I don't have to worry too much about smelling good or going outside. And it can be a very. I think it's. I would never be concerned about any of you guys, but I think it's the worry about this stuff gets more addictive in years. It doesn't get less addictive. Like there are people who are,
Right.
and I think in a few years it's connecting with that next generation. They will really probably need like similar to some of those old woodworking dudes that we know, or from
Yeah.
what I can tell, that the guy who took you through as a mentor in
Yeah, for blacksmithing.
metalwork, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, blacksmithing, like similar to those kinds of people who don't have mobile phones, but they don't need to, and they have that attention span where they can listen and they just listen. Like for me, the
Yep.
person I'd like to be for. I don't think I will have a son, but I'll have people that are like son figures to me,
Right.
friends who have
Yeah.
divorces at different points in their life, or friends that have struggled, like rough nights,
Yeah.
and they'll need somewhere to crash that night. And it's like you and your partner can be those types of people where they come over, they sit down. And for me, the type of person I'd want to be is 100% or as engaged as possible. And I think it's a meditation. It's an art of like trying to sit. As an example, like sometimes I want to get in my car and listen to some tunes,
Yep.
but it's like I know that right now, like there's probably a podcast or an audio book that will make me a better version of myself in a few
Yeah.
years' time, and
Yeah.
make me more like a dad or the father or partner that I want to be like. Um, but I need to progress now. It's similar to like I'll do a job interview and it's like like I am two small two small courses off getting that job,
Mm.
but I didn't get the job because I wasn't experienced. And I just think sometimes, yeah, start to, like you were saying with the regrets thing, like start to
Yeah.
play back on how much time could I have been, like, how much time could of that time where I've like wasted it in YouTube holes or watching random clips and
Yeah.
stuff. How much of that like should have been probably, a couple of lectures every now and then, or a couple of courses, like, internet
Yeah.
courses that teach you these things very well. And I don't think there's any problem with streaming. I think that it's more like a
You got to find the
um
balance.
yeah, the
And
balance for
sometimes the
sure.
balance doesn't mean 50-50. It might mean
Yes.
90-10 as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Like,
would agree with that.
yeah.
There's points where I think, I need to be doing something less. You mentioned a really good one there, which is going down YouTube rabbit holes. That's something I
Mm,
find that I do not just with YouTube, but shows I've already watched. I think,
yeah.
man, I could be
Yeah.
spending this time doing something altogether different, learning a new skill. I remember
Yeah.
I've taken up a few new skills in the last 2 years over COVID. Korean, Japanese. I've tried to take up different courses online, stuff, trying to learn about investing. And I always get like that little bit in, and then I'll be like, oh, it's cool. I've done maybe an hour. Let's watch a YouTube
Yeah.
video. And then I do that for 2 days. And I think, geez, I've really wasted some fucking time here, haven't I? like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I think it's just too easy to get
Oh,
stuck
yeah.
into those rabbit holes and not
Yeah.
think about the thing you should be doing.
Yeah. And the distractions are awesome, to be fair. Like I'm seeing like all these new Marvel shows, Star Wars shows. Like
Yeah.
I'm really bad. Like I feel like I've got my fifth gauntlet, right? My fifth is it five Infinity Stones? I don't know. I feel like I've put my last one on. I've
Yeah.
got binge recently, and
Yeah, so did
I
I.
think I think we have them all, like almost all of them, except for Apple TV. It's like the
Yeah.
last one we need to collect. But I almost have one family member. We all pay for one of them each, and
Yeah.
it's like I'm getting to that point now where it's like I'm almost fatigued. Like there's so much to choose from that it's
Yeah.
like I've got to watch Peacemaker. I want to watch this. Oh, the new Game of Thrones series is coming out.
Yeah.
Oh, The Boys season 3. All of these different. There's so much stimulus. So it's almost like trying to.
It does. It
for-
feels like you've got a
Yeah.
list you need to check off of
Yes.
all these
Yeah. Yeah.
things, and it's just
So
so much
stressful.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, and
Um,
I think it makes sense. It's trying to like have that discipline, and it's the path less traveled for sure. Like
yeah.
it's so much easier just to fall into that, and I kind of see it as like similar to like I don't imagine my kids being on their computer all the time, and I wouldn't want them to, or the younger generation to be on their computer all the
Mm.
time. But I need to be able to back that. It was kind of like when your mum would be like, "Go outside and play." And you're like, but you're sitting on the TV watching. Yeah, sorry, you're not on the TV.
Yeah.
You're sitting on the couch
No,
watching
sometimes they
TV,
are, they're
and you're
just
yeah,
chilling
yeah,
out
yeah,
on TV.
yeah, yeah. And, oh my
But
gosh,
I
yeah,
agree.
it's so literal. Yeah. My mum, we broke a lot of TVs. Our household was a strange
You
sort.
know what? I do remember you guys having a strange amount of computers upstairs.
Yeah. My dad loved collecting his computers.
Like
I think he had
12
Geppetto
MacBooks or
syndrome.
something.
Yeah. He loved finding broken things and like trying to fix them up and stuff.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
no, it was his thing, but he always had the idea that he'd sell it, and then it kind of turned into low key hoarding,
Ah, I
which
see, I
sucks.
see.
But yeah, yeah. Like it's so easy to do. Like it's like easy to be like, oh, you can tell your mum and dad,
Yep.
like they're just sitting there on their laptops and stuff, and you go to watch a movie. Like I've gone to watch movies with my mum and dad a few times, and they both have their laptops open.
Mm.
And you'll see a funny moment, and you'll go back to have a moment where you can connect and laugh with them, and they're on their laptops still. And
Yeah.
that's not like to say that they're bad people, but it's just one of those situations where it's like I know that like any manager you have at work, you've had good managers, you've had bad managers. Some managers got some things right and sucked at other things, and you
Yep.
try to I try to envision it as if I was ever a manager, I want to get the best traits and the best the best attributes from each of them and try and deliver that as best as I can as a manager or boss or whatever I am one day in a leadership position.
Yeah.
And it's the same with like my parents. It's like I love them to pieces, but there's a lot of things that they could have done better, and I think that they would agree and that they'd want me to be me to do slightly better. And I feel like being able to engage my kids or being able to like take them on a hike, and I can like I loved when I'd walk with my mum sometimes. She grew up in Papua New Guinea until she was like 17 years old.
Yeah.
So for her, and her parents were like mission, but like you'd walk around and they'd always be kind of pulling out random things. But this is the Aboriginals or like the people in Papua New Guinea. They use this
Yep.
thing if you ever have an like incident like with your sores or anything. Oh, you can eat this if you cook this long enough. This is sarsaparilla. Like like
Yeah.
they'd be pulling all the, and I just love that knowledge. It was just so
I've got to
interesting.
say, I
And they'd
think I've had those situations, but most of them are, you're right. When I was younger, when I wasn't on the TV or computer or
Yeah.
whatever all the time, I have less of them now, but I think I'm also just doing less things at the moment. I want to say it's because of COVID, but it might just be because I'm not going out and doing things for myself and learning new tricks and new things about different things in life, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you sort of touched on it there as well, about, your mum and dad and with different people, but you've also mentioned relationship, and work-life balance or relationship life balance,
Yeah.
briefly in that message that you sent me. That was one that I was really interested to talk about. One, I wanted to get your point of view, also the point you were trying to make.
Yeah.
Seemed like you wanted to be able to spend time with people, but also live life outside of those people. Was that what you were trying to say, or have I got that wrong?
Oh no, no. I've got to try and recap on what I was probably saying. I should have really listened to it
No, fair
before
enough.
tonight. So I was probably just running on a roll. But I guess like yeah, maybe I was talking about relationships as well. Oh, like I guess having a wide variety of friends is always
Yeah.
something that I've always valued because I call it my the pie chart of what makes up your personality or your interests. And it's like say
Yep.
like 30% might be pop culture, there might be 20% that's into like activity and sports, there might be 10% that's into I don't know, like foods and like making baking or doing else, all of your favorite activities that make up you. And
Yeah.
I kind of say like I call it my pie chart, and I tell Rochelle like fulfilling my pie chart or creative, fulfilling my creative or whatever pie chart it is. And I think that all of those bars, or whether you look at it as kind of bars instead of a pie chart,
Mm.
we sometimes try, and I've realized that I like to be kind of a very varied person, or I love the quote like know a little about a lot, and I like to be involved in a lot of different
Yeah.
circles, even if they're not the things that I fully flesh out. Like just generally I feel like it makes life more richer to
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
being with lots of
Totally agree.
people. Yeah, living in lots of places. Like that Baz Luhrmann sunscreen. I don't know if you know that song, but the lyrics of that, like he kind of
No.
talks about like he says like live in New York City for 6 months, but leave before it makes you hard.
Right.
Live in Northern California for 6 months, but leave before it makes you soft. But like generally, like he talks about all these different
Okay.
ideas of like it's a lecturer talking to his cohort before they go, the class of 1995, I think it was
Yep.
written a while ago, but I love like he kind of talks about just the different things that make life feel a little bit more full. And for me personally, like I think I sometimes had a bad habit of trying to live my pie chart through a few people
Yeah.
that might be in one group, and it's very hard to do that because my pie chart is going to be very different to other people's pie charts. What we have as our priorities could be very
Yeah.
different, and I realized that for me to really experience those different topics and conversations and styles of people, it meant meeting a wider variety of people and being able to sustain and maintain friendships with that wider variety of people. Because I think it kind of created a like you have people who are, and I'm not going to go into the politics thing, but I, like people who are and I hate saying left or right, but
Yeah.
when you get what I mean,
I get you.
lefty friends and right wing friends,
Yep.
because it kind of like can create a more central
Point of view.
being who yeah you kind of have from both, like ideas from both, like even like I'm agnostic these days, but I have religious friends and non-religious friends,
Yep.
and I think that it kind of creates like for me anyway, as a being, it kind of creates a lot of moments where it's like when I talk, I don't talk as I try not to talk out of my butt because I know that I have a friend who has told me some points, or we've discussed
Yeah.
things, and it kind of creates less room for the ignorance because you have that wider variety and
I like that term.
maintain those
Less
friendships.
room for ignorance. I was always
Yeah,
told, by an ex-girlfriend's parents, they told me a lot to travel. They wanted me
yeah,
to not just travel the whole world, but they wanted me to see different countries because I've never been outside of Australia. So most of all I knew at that point was Australia. And I've still never been able to travel, but it's something that I heard a lot was it'll widen your perspective of life. It'll make you more rounded as a human being, being able to see other people's perspectives, what they go through. And I've taken that up myself in the last couple of years is trying to learn about different cultures. And I found it's one of the most fun things in my day to day is learning a new thing about someone from a different culture, or a different place in the world and how they do things. Which is why I'm now in European discords and talking to Japanese people and Korean people
Yeah.
all the time. But I think you're right. Yeah, you kind of need a bit of everything in life to understand and be the most well-rounded human being that you can be. Um,
Yeah.
I like the idea of, someone who's master of none. What's the term for it? Like you're a bit of everything, but you're not an expert at anything.
Yeah.
But that means in more situations you're more useful than that person that's a master of one thing, because in every other situation, jack of all
Jack of all
trades.
trades. There we go. Yeah.
Thank you, Cinnamon. But yeah, in so many situations, you have a bit of knowledge to share and gain and give to other people. Whereas there's so many situations that someone who's just focused on one thing their whole life, they can't really give a lot of information out on something that's diverse. I think
Yeah.
it's important to be a diverse person.
Yeah. 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 I forget who it was, but someone was saying like they date authors, or they're role models of people they've never even met before, or I think like you can kind of live a lot of these lives and experiences through books, podcasts, different like people. And
Yeah.
I've actually, yeah, it's a really interesting way to look at it with you, because Rochelle and I did this thing, couch surfing. It's an
Yep.
online site where you have people from around the world stay with you, and
Yeah.
they stay with you for free, and they either stay in your spare room, or they like might stay on your couch depending on your setup. And we met quite a few people from around the world, and it was really awesome. Like, just while we
Yeah.
couldn't travel through COVID, we could have backpackers over and kind of learn. We just from sitting them with them for like a couple of hours. Like, there were nights after dinner where we just talk for 3 hours about different things. I'll say that word again, and we'd learn, like,
Yeah.
Spanish and French people and
That sounds
Canadians,
amazing.
and
I've heard you
yeah,
talk about it so many times,
yeah,
and I've never even considered that they were from a different place. Like in
yeah,
my head, it was just someone staying on your couch. Like I didn't think about where they come from, what they are like, and you get to learn from them as well as them learn from you. I think that's really
yeah.
cool. I don't know why I've never thought that before.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's awesome. It's a bit sad they put a paywall on it recently, so there's
Really?
heaps of people who just don't pay for it anymore because they're like, yeah, I think it's like 79 a year, and they just said it's for maintenance and stuff. And it's like, fair enough, it
Damn.
was free for a very
Yeah.
long time, but it's also like it was a bit annoying because it's like they're a random middleman, because the people who own the places aren't charging, and the people
Yeah.
who are traveling aren't charging anything. So it's like
Oh,
the
damn.
idea, it kind of takes away when you have to pay money for this random.
Yeah.
There's new sites that are coming up. I think like that people are trying to work around it, but
Okay, that would
yeah,
be
like
cool. That would
what
be
you were
cool if they
saying,
came
like
out again.
sounds like it kind of like it gets that same itch, especially now because I follow quite a few of them on Instagram and stuff. Quite a lot of them have like they've moved, like they've left the country because obviously COVID situation.
Yep.
I think there's one or two still kind of
Yeah.
around Western Australia now. They're just road tripping and stuff, which is cool. It's fun seeing their adventures as well, and then seeing them go back to their own countries, like seeing them in their homes and stuff. And you're like, oh, that's what they were talking about. Or they'll send you a photo of it. This is what I was talking about. This is my village. And you're like, oh, that's sick. Like,
That's awesome.
but I think, yeah, being able to meet people um, online would be, yeah, that'd be really cool. And it'd really like kind of, yeah, get that fix for you where you can kind of talk to people and learn, and you still get that experience of being able to, especially while we can't travel. Like, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because even as it was, I wanted to be able to meet people of those cultures. I was planning a travel to Korea,
yeah,
um, before COVID hit, right before COVID hit, and I was like, oh, it would be so good. I've like worked out the planning costs, how much it's going to cost me to like be there for maybe 2 weeks or so. Um, and then COVID hit, and I was like, well, shit, I'm not going to be able to travel for maybe a year or two. At the time, I thought, probably a couple months, but it just kept going and going and going, and it just never came around to a point where I was able to travel. And I still didn't have my passport. I've got to get that sorted out, but there is that itch for me as well, where I want to meet and go and experience different cultures and different people, that I just don't get to do at the moment.
yeah. How is it in so it's South Korea, right? They like,
Yep.
obviously I'm gonna sound like I'm sure they speak South Korean.
They
Just
they
is it
they,
just
they
Korean?
speak Korean.
Is it the same language as the Northern Koreans, or is it a different
It's the same
language?
language, yeah. So they've got
Okay,
same Korean,
right.
but they are much more advanced in my eyes, than, or at least advanced politically speaking,
Yeah,
and
progressive. Yeah,
yeah, they're more progressive, I suppose.
yeah,
But they're also quite different in the things that they value as like a moral will be different to them to what it is to us, or the social circumstances. Like you might go to dinner and it's normal and healthy to talk about, you know, how was your poo today, and it's like, okay, they're like, we would never have that conversation here. It'd so be weird during
Yeah,
dinner,
yeah,
but they would. It's an act of caring about someone, how healthy they are, is to just understand something so simple as that. Um,
yeah.
where
Wow,
it
that's
makes
cool.
sense if you think about it. It's something literally every single person does,
Mm,
and we've made it some weird taboo topic.
taboo.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's that's really interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I'd never really heard. Like, I obviously heard about some of the negatives of like North Korea and knew that this is going to sound extremely ignorant. But I guess like I'd always heard them kind of like compared to, not compared, but they'd be referenced next to Japan, like in terms of like,
yep.
you know, how advanced they are and you know, like I think they have some of the quickest. Is it the quickest internet in the world? Like, is that?
Probably true. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
I when
Yeah.
I play with them, yeah, they've all got quite good internet, and the people I watch online as well, same.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, they have their telecom systems there are like gaming teams. Like if you would imagine Telstra in Australia had their own gaming team, you'd be like, oh, they must be really good at like providing high speed service if a gaming team's going to partner up with them.
Wow.
It's like that over there where they have my favorite team personally is Telecom One, South Korea Telecom One. And
Oh, wow.
they have great internet, and because it's a partnership for them, it's part of their way of life. It's also such a big thing over there is the gaming culture and gaming life. It provides a lot for them.
Yeah. Wow. Ah. Yeah, they'd probably make a lot of money through it all as well. Like the
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
so
Um,
big over there.
I wanted to mention as well, uh, something that you mentioned, and I think I was more curious than understood what you were talking about. Is you were saying that people at our age going through a lot of turmoil. I have an idea in my head of what you were thinking,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'd rather hear what you wanted to say about it before I say that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say like no different to any other age group in some ways. Like every age group kind of does, but I also
Mm,
think that you see the problems manifest themselves in ugly ways when those people get older. So like as an example, like you know our parents' generation, it's just an easy one because they're close enough. But
yep.
there's a lot of like you know there's conversation, and I think that sometimes it gets thrown around a bit too easily, like the toxic masculinity conversation. There's a lot of people who kind of talk about that, but I don't really see it as like I think there is definitely a lot of toxic masculinity. I
Yeah.
agree it exists. I sometimes think that people get labeled as toxic masculine. It's like no, this guy's just a blokey bloke.
Yeah.
I think it's more like the expression of love. I guess it sounds really cheesy when I say it out loud, but like
No, it's
as an example, like the like my dad's generation was a very much a hard head down, don't think about it, you know,
yep.
continue, move on, and don't talk about mental health, don't talk about
Yeah.
you know, any of those feelings, or you know, if you have those, and I think that ultimately kind of led him into some trouble later in life because he did ignore
Yeah.
some of those things or didn't really take into account some of the things that were happening around him. You know, when he was younger, like I don't know, like they were the generation that you know called people like homophobic slurs like on a
Yeah.
casual basis, and
Yeah.
sometimes it
Absolutely.
probably was genuinely meant as an insult rather than just like a bit of a word that doesn't carry too much weight depending on the context. But
Exactly.
yeah, like I think like you know we have they're the people who raised us, but
Yeah.
and they you know they did some things that were pretty wrong, but probably some things that were right at times. I don't know. I've seen a few situations now, and it sounds really cheesy, but like I often just say to people, I'm like, this would have never been a problem for our parents or
Yeah.
anyone before us, any of our ancestors. And I don't know if I always sound like I'm going to war against technology. I think there's so many good things that are associated with technology too.
Yep.
But there are moments where, like for example, like my friend, he's broken up with his partner of you know 3 years, and it was a pretty toxic end. But he will still receive text messages from her, like
Yeah.
every now and then from like random nights, like like random Saturdays, and I think he's blocked her, but she'll figure out ways to message him, like just random
Ah.
things that are really horrible, or just
Yep.
like really bad slurs, or
Oh.
things to make him semi jealous, or just
Yeah.
really negative things. And like it doesn't help that he's a few drinks down, and that's kind of way more normalized than usual.
Yeah.
But like he will receive text messages, and I was just saying to him, I was like, how strange that like you block her, but she can still message you. That would have never been a problem for your parents. Like your
That
parents would have
is,
been able to,
yeah.
they would have broken up, they would have healed. They may have occasionally seen, oh, I saw Sally down at the ice skating rink, but that's like
Yep.
it, every couple of months maybe. But you lived in a smallish town, but you weren't consistently getting updated
Yeah.
with every little thing they're doing. And I think it's the same as like with stories and social media and the way that we consistently have things kind of being broadcasted, good or bad,
Yep.
to our friends and people we don't really talk to either on a very very regular basis, and
That is,
it's kind
yeah.
of normalized. And I'm not saying that like I don't think there's any change I can necessarily make for or we could make for society. It's more just like one of those things, an observation, I guess.
Yeah.
You see, the way that we operate today is just very different, and it's not once again it's not all bad, but I think there's like those limitations or those kinds of things where it's like, how can I make sure that we're not? And we are kind of like we are kind of like the guinea pigs as a generation. Like we are kind
Yeah.
of the first ones who've really kind of millions and millions of years, like for different societies and cultures,
Yep.
we are the first ones to pick up these little screens in our hands and be able to connect with anyone at any moment. And
And
it's
we're
kind of like
making a million
yeah,
decisions and mistakes a day doing it.
yeah,
People,
yeah.
yeah, sharing and oversharing it.
And
Yeah.
it's moving quickly. Like we will definitely be one of the like we have the potential to be one of the most intelligent. Like think about I talk to and you probably the same. We talk to our parents sometimes and like, oh, I used to have a question and you just didn't know the answer to it, or
Yeah.
I used to have a question and I'd have to open up a textbook or go to a library,
Yep.
or ride my bike or drive my car there, go to the library, check that answer, scroll for hours. Sometimes it'll take an hour just to come to that answer and
Yeah.
that conclusion. I'm sifting through books just trying to find the page,
Yep.
and then I'd get maybe a half-assed answer that would probably be proven like incorrect in a
Yeah.
few
Yeah.
years
It's
anyway.
true.
Like for us, we have instantaneous like messaging. We can automatically access stuff,
Yeah.
but there's so much that I think I don't know. Like I don't want to say we become less humane, but like there was a video online a few years ago,
Mm.
and you can find it on YouTube. It's these like young teenagers, maybe like 3 years ago, and there's a guy drowning in a lake,
Right.
and they're just filming him and laughing like on Snapchat, and the guy died, like he drowned.
Shit.
But these dudes literally, I don't know if it's desensitized, like we see TV, it starts to not really translate anymore between, oh, that's a movie,
Yeah.
that's a screen, and this is real life. Like,
I think there
okay,
is that
responses.
level of desensitization. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
remember particularly myself, and this is gonna sound so dumb, but as a kid, I would play a lot of Call of Duty. I'd see a lot of I was desensitized to a person being killed because you do it
yeah,
100 times a game, or you'd see it multiple times, and when it happened in a movie, it wasn't as hard hitting as it was to someone older than me who hadn't seen that so many times.
yeah,
um and I think there is a little of sadness there, and especially with the church we went to, um I became far too used to going to someone's funeral every couple of
yeah.
weeks, and it was like,
Mm,
holy shit, like it's not a thing you want to get used to being around, but it was
yeah.
something that I eventually became used to. And then when other people would die, or other people I knew people that died, I would be like, I wouldn't be as um sorry for them as I may have been if I hadn't been around that situation so
Yeah.
much. It was like, yeah, I've been to a million funerals. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a lack of. It's like it's not like you're trying to, but I think nurses get it. They get I forget the name of it, but it's like something for like emotional fatigue or something. Like not emotional fatigue. There's like actually a name for it though, because they see so much death and they cry so much that when it comes to, they still do cry at their normal like their family members'
Yeah.
funerals, but there's like because my sister and my mum are both nurses, and they've both always told me about some of the experiences where they're like, it's the hardest with the families. Like you're talking to the families and stuff, and they're coming up
Yeah.
and hugging you, and they're saying, thank you, we knew you could do everything you could, and they did, but it's still
Yep.
just like, well, we still ended up giving like it's almost like going to someone as a mechanic after their car's broken down, and you're kind of just like,
Yeah.
oh, look, we did everything we
Couldn't
could, and
fix
they're
it.
like, oh,
Yeah.
I paid X, you know what I mean? I don't
Yeah.
know. So you still feel like you didn't. You feel still will always feel like you could have done more. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked here, but
No, no. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Like, I think there is this there's a sense of like I've spoken to a few friends that are teachers or people who work in early childhood, and I think there's this go like we probably had a hold on us, to be honest, with technology as well.
Oh, yeah.
You know, our attention spans and generations, you know, that are older than us too. Um, but like they're saying, like there's these people who will like there's actually these. It's such a stupid name, but like TikTok ticks, where you physically like will start breaking out to dancing, like almost like it's almost like a you know like how you have Tourette's and you have like
Yeah,
your
I
different like
have
tics.
heard that
Yeah,
more people have developed Tourette's in recent
yeah,
years, or
yeah,
during COVID, because they had, and this is what I was told. I don't know if this is true. They had such a lack of personality that was their own, that all
yeah,
they had was what they've seen. So when
yeah,
they were alone in lockdown, they started developing tics, because they weren't maybe as sure as who they were as a person, or they didn't have their own development as a person, and they just
yeah.
sort of sponged from the people around them. I found that very sad, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They and that's yeah, and it's you probably heard of it before. The like a lot of these guys will go to they'll go like not necessarily the games, but I feel like it just kind of gets worse and worse. It's like it becomes the lesser evil situation where it's like, well, if I'm making millions, like who? And to be honest, like
Yeah.
if I was making millions for an app and
Yep.
people were getting addicted to it, I'd be like you know what I mean? There would be a level of like it's very hard to say until you're in that situation, and it's very
Yeah.
hard to show someone. I think there's a quote on that. It's like it's hard to show a man that something's wrong with his profession when it's linked to his salary.
Yeah.
Like it's really hard, and they're using that like for I think they're referencing it for like a lot of the Nazis and stuff. You know, when your salary and your family, you know what I mean. If you're making
Yeah.
millions or whatever, it's really hard to see that it's wrong that what you're doing. That there's something wrong with what you're doing. But
Obviously, not on the level of Nazis, but I used to have that in my old job when I was working for a bank. I can't say what because of contract stuff, but
yeah,
I would have many difficult conversations per day where I knew I was the bad guy in that situation, and I knew what I was doing wasn't morally correct, but it was correct by the bank, and that's what I had to do. Was, I might have to shut someone's account down, or I might have to say sorry, you're fucked until Monday. Like, like we can't
yeah,
help you. You're stranded out there with your kids in like the side of a road, but sorry, we can't give you more money for a taxi or something.
yeah,
We don't have anything for you. Goodbye.
yeah,
Um, and you'd have that. You'd have that. Am I doing the right thing? Like, I know I legally can't grab this person's information and call them and personally help them, but that's what morally you think you should probably do.
yeah,
And it's a hard thing to wrestle with, and I'd have to have it, maybe 20 times a day sometimes. Um, and you'd have these conversations, you'd go home, and you'd lie in bed, and you'd just think, man, what the fuck? Like, you wouldn't know what to make of it. Am I a bad person because I'm doing my job and trying to receive a salary? Um,
yeah,
or is it just something that's happened to me? It's hard to wage or wrestle with.
yeah, yeah. And you could turn around and justify it. Like the guys who studied Facebook, they were probably young intern types who were just like, you know, we've done it. We're working for this massive prestigious company. But they would go to Vegas and they'd spend hours there and they'd start. And to them, they're probably thinking, well, no one's losing money through this,
Mm,
but they are losing time, and time's just as valuable. But they'd go and watch these machines, and they'd go and watch these like
yeah.
the big slot machines, and they'd watch them and study them for hours and try and watch from a psychological standpoint what makes it so addictive. And one of the things they came back with was when they watched all these slot machines, they realized that things happen in bulk. So what they did with Facebook, and it's so silly,
Mm,
but initially, it was just a reaction. I think there wasn't a glitch, but it was just like a quick testing with the likes on Facebook.
yep.
But basically, liking wasn't initially there, and then you liked something, and suddenly you see that people don't just view your status; people like it, and you get this dopamine hit, and you can
Yeah.
see who did it. Oh, my crush did it, you know, and you can go through, and
Yeah.
you start to say, oh, that person's cute, and they're in my class, they liked it, you know. and you start to get this kind of ego hit every single time you see those likes. But
Yep.
what they realized is they could batch release the likes, and that was a bigger payoff because it was like a slot machine. Back in the day, like, and when we initially, I was saying to my friend the other day, I was saying Discord is kind of like, to me right now,
Mm.
what it was like for Facebook back in the day. You used to log off of Facebook. You'd have Facebook, you'd log in,
Yeah.
and then you'd log out because you don't want you share a family computer, and you don't want your flipping
Yep.
sister coming in and being like, "Ooh, who's Tamika?" or writing a status.
I've totally forgotten about that.
Yeah, yeah. You used to log off, and everyone would remember their password because you would
Yeah.
log back on. You'd have half an hour time slot, right? This is my time to go on Facebook, and you'd jump off it. But that was the important thing. You jumped off of Facebook.
Yeah.
Now we're consistently logged into this thing so much that
And
it's like we've already
received straight to us as soon as it
Yeah.
happens as well.
Yeah, yeah. And these likes, they rather than happening, one like at a time, and you
Yep.
get one like and you refresh. Like it used to be, you would walk away for half an hour, so you'd come back and 10 likes, 20 likes, and
Yeah.
sometimes you might have 5 likes, but it goes, no, we're not going to show it yet. We're going to show it when there's 10 likes, so that it looks like,
Yeah.
oh, look at all these people who like my. And reality, you're getting 30 likes.
Yep.
But rather than getting them kind of like kind of trickling in, like 2 likes, 4 likes, 3 likes, 2
Yep.
likes. You get 10 likes, then another 10 likes, then another 10 likes, and you're like, "Whoa, slot machine style, we're winning big,
Yeah.
baby!" And that was their mentality. And to them at that point, they probably got raises. It was probably
Yeah.
a really cool thing, and they probably didn't mean for it to be this addictive. And then the
I
next
think,
person
yeah,
just comes along.
addictive
Yeah.
is the right term. We've become
Yeah.
slowly over time addicted to that. Yeah, or instant information of, have I done the right thing? And someone's liking what you've done, and then you wanted it more often. So now it's on our phones constantly, and we're so connected to it.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
and
never
it's
even
just-
thought about how that's developed.
Yeah, and it's just subtle things as well. Like I think things can coexist. Like I've shown you that Nakey Jakey video. I love the one on Couch Multiplayer.
Yeah, yeah.
Of the old. It was Xbox 360 and PS3, and they both
Yep.
allowed online playing, but also played 4-player. And
Yeah.
that was such a good time because I think it still encouraged people to be next to each other, as silly as it and clunky as it was. Like
Yep.
you were all together on a couch and you're all laughing, and I think there's something like something beautiful about that. Like
Yeah.
I think he mentions like I missed drinking copious amounts of Mountain Dew and inhaling people's Dorito flavored farts as we play and stuff ourselves into this room, and it's like like there is something
No
like
one's showered
oddly
in 2 days.
yeah, and it just seems to get more and more kind of detached. Like even I was talking to my girlfriend's brother a few days ago. He loves his gaming and stuff, and I was saying like so I'll just quickly like kind of parallel what was saying. Like comedians, when you become a good comic, you can sometimes get to a point where you're on such a high that you go to cities, you go to LA, you go to the really refined places, and people laugh, but your jokes become less funny because you haven't degraded them or haven't put yourself through the grueling process of going
Yeah.
and seeing if your jokes work and trying it again and again and again.
Yep.
And they said you go to these back dingy New York areas, and you go to the worst bars in New York, and you're going to get roasted, but you'll come out with a good set because you go back
Right.
and you write on those notes. Okay, that joke no one laughed, and people sweared at me in that joke. So, and you kind of work on being a good comic, and also
Yeah.
getting good with hecklers. Someone yells something out, and you yell something awful back, and they want to shut up now. So you get really good at your comebacks because you're like,
Yep.
I'm going to get really good at roasting the heck out of you too. And I think like it's similar, like the old school, like as toxic as they were, the old school COD lobbies, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the chaos of like where the gaming should have kind of been. You know what I mean? It's like you work your
Yeah.
way up from there. You will probably become a lot more funny, but a lot more hardened, and be able to take a lot more
Yep.
jokes. Well, I've noticed that a lot of people are saying that now it's just like there's a lot that are just type based, which is
Yeah.
cool. Like you type to each other, but I think there is something weirdly charming about still hearing that like
Yep. Yep.
low quality like.
Oh, I still
Your
sometimes
mum.
get it in like
Yeah.
if I play CS:GO, someone will be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
fuck your mum," and it's now funny because at first that was probably annoying, but when you hear it 50 times a day, you're like, "Ha."
Yeah,
I bet you
yeah,
didn't.
I don't know, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, and maybe I'm talking from a very like to be honest, I play very very. I play every couple of months maybe. And with friends online, a little bit less. But
Mm.
yeah, man. I'm still such a big fan of gaming. Like I have a friend like Nathan, and he's not against it. He just doesn't understand it. And I've
Yeah.
tried to describe it to him a few times, and he's like, "Yeah, I never played that game." I'm like, "Well, I can't talk to that, mate. I don't have
It's
no
so
idea what to do
brick
anymore."
wally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. See that same guy. He goes the other day. He's like, "Oh, he's like, I just don't understand why people love Robin Williams." And I was
Right.
like, "Whoa!" And I was like, why don't you do it?" He's like, "I don't know. I've never seen any of these things." I was like, "What's this?" I was like, "The way you described this made it sound like you'd seen all of his
Yeah.
stuff and went, meh."
Yeah.
But you should have prefaced it with, "I've never seen, like, I've never heard of him before. Like, what was his thing?" But he basically like kind of said like the way yeah, it made it sound like I've seen all his work. I hate it, And I was like,
Mm.
like,
Have you
yeah.
seen Dead Poet Society? Now that you've mentioned Robin Williams.
You know what? I'm an awful person. I started that. I loved the start. Never finished it.
No, you've got to watch the end. You've
Yeah,
got
I've
to
got to
watch the
finish
end of
it.
that movie.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful movie to me. I remember you may not remember this teacher, Mr. Newton, at school. He
Yes. Yeah.
once
Yeah.
said that he wished he had that moment of um oh teacher my teacher, I think it was.
Captain,
Um
my captain.
oh Captain my captain, yes. He
Yeah.
said I wish I had that moment as a teacher towards the end of the year with a student, or with my
Yeah.
students. And I hadn't watched the movie. I only watched the movie after I finished high school. And once I did, I regretted not doing that to him. I
Yeah.
wished I had given him that moment because he was such a good teacher and I respected him so much. But I thought of it just as this is something we do. We go into class, he teaches us, he gives us all the information we need to know about something, he gives us little life tips, and that's what every teacher does. And we move on and then we finish school. But I never
Yeah.
thought about how much he was giving to be able to give us those little life tips and how he
Yeah.
stylized his own classes. And looking back on it now, I still wish I could go into his classes sometimes and just learn about what he's saying and
Yeah.
really take in things. But yeah, it's a good one to watch. I would highly
Would
recommend it. Highly
would
recommend it.
you would you ever look at hitting him up for a coffee?
Oh, absolutely. He
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
not just a good person to talk to, but he has. I mean, he was my business teacher, right? So, and it's a big thing for me is I like the idea of starting businesses. It's something really fun for me. I love the idea of being an entrepreneur and coming up with a new idea and planning it out and how that's going to work. Obviously, I don't start like 99% of the businesses I think of in my head, but I love going down that pathway in my head, and he's so good at that. And he's not just good at the ideas, but being critical of them and being realistic about them in a positive way.
Yeah.
And I loved having that. I wish I could throw all my business ideas at him.
Yeah. Oh man, I reckon you should really. It'd be a really valuable friendship for you to like kind of. It'd feel clunky and awkward, but even if you just go there, because I was talking to a teacher and he said, no, like every student kind of thinks it, but a lot of teachers are sitting there and it's like they would have really liked to have heard that. You know what I mean? Like I wish
Yeah,
we normalize kind of catching up with teachers and doing brief debriefs on them and being like, let me shout you a coffee. Can we
yeah,
catch up? I just want to talk about stuff or just to let you know that you were great in this way. And yeah, I wanted to let you know that you had an impact because yeah, a lot of those people, we give them the funeral treatment or we rock up to their funerals or they go through whole lifetimes and they're never
mm,
told how valuable they are. And then, they pass away. Yeah, no, that'd be really cool.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I've got that with a
yeah,
few different teachers from that school as well.
yeah,
The level of care that they put in was just so meaningful to me, but I never said anything about it to them, and I kind of regret that now. But I would love to meet up with them in the future and
yeah,
say, this is what you did for me. It was awesome. Thank you. Let's have a coffee or something.
yeah, yeah. No, I agree. It's hard to do as well. It feels awkward, I think, sometimes. Like even
Yeah.
just to tell someone something, like to really genuinely compliment someone to their face, like properly, not just like, oh, you look nice, like trying to
Yeah.
genuinely give a compliment to someone. It can be a weird thing sometimes, but it's like you kind of have to drop it like a bomb and walk away. And be like,
I
"Oh,
do that.
have a good time."
I
Yeah,
bomb drop and walk. I
yeah,
go,
yeah, yeah,
man, you look
yeah,
nice today, or I'll say, I like
yeah,
the way you did this, and then I won't know where to go from there. So I'm just like,
yeah,
hey, I'm
yeah,
fucking
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
out. Bye.
Leave a note. Yeah, no, it's like in have you've seen Hot Rod with Andy
Yeah,
Samberg?
yeah.
He's like, Denise, you look pretty tonight. She's like, what? And he's like, I
You
said
look
you look shitty,
shitty.
and then runs, just runs away awkwardly. That's what's playing in my head. Like it's and it is. It's that thing with guys especially where it's like guys. It's even harder. Guy to guy like
Mm,
compliments can be kind of tricky because it's like we kind of do it in a roundabout way. We're like, oh, if you give someone a compliment, it's like you didn't suck at soccer today, mate. You know,
Yeah.
oh, you didn't totally f it up for everyone. You know, it's like that kind of style where it's like, you know, you tongue in cheek, and I don't know. Some ways I do like it, but it's like nice
Mm.
to genuinely make it. I say like make it awkward sometimes, and actually be genuine with someone. Like treat it like
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Is it
think
that?
it's becoming more popular these days because
I hope so. Yeah.
I don't know if we're obviously not the generation that's leading that, but we are starting to try to implement it more and more. I see a lot of
Mm,
our guys in the group will compliment each other on something that they do or something that they've done, or
yeah.
maybe just a physical attribute.
Mm,
And I think that's really good and really
yeah.
healthy because something I wanted to mention earlier as well is that the generation before us, or at least our parents, um, my dad or my stepdad was so emotionally stunted, saying something like that would make people believe he might be gay or something. And to him, that was the worst thing in the world. But now it's like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
let's say that thing and prop up another man
Yeah.
and make them feel better about themselves.
Mm,
It's not talked about enough still, even in today's world.
yeah.
And it definitely wasn't talked about enough back then. I think it's really good that we can do that, but we're still getting used to it. I think the
Oh yeah.
generation below us will be far better at that
Yeah.
than we are.
I found it quite fascinating with what you said there as well, with being scared of being gay or just being busy. I think that's the reason I'm trying to cram these last couple of years in because I don't
Mm.
see like in my eyes, I think it'd be cool to always be able to like hang out like I do with my mates now. I think it'd be fun, but there is a societal norm where you do start to stop. Like as an example, it sounds real like silly, but you stop having sleepovers with your mates. You know,
Yeah.
there is a time when they stop crashing on your couch, and it's like it's less cool and more weird. And I don't know if that's me. I don't know if it'll
Yeah.
just naturally happen. If they will naturally do it, and I'll just kind of be like, well, I'm going to do this too. Then I don't want to be the weird one.
Yep.
I'm going to catch, you know, I'm going to catch up with everyone else and make sure I'm on the same page. But like we were walking through, we were talking about this, Rochelle and I, because it was saying like some of my mates, like it'll get to a point, and it will get to a point as well where it's like it'll be weird in a way if you do have kids and you do have a wife, and this is why I don't really want to have a kids and wife, but it'd
Mm.
be weird if you come over every Friday night and get hammered with me and then like stay there till like
Yep.
the next day because I will be thinking, am I contributing to you not being the best partner you can be or the best father you can be right now? Like maybe you should be back at home with them after a while. You know, we'll do a few drinks,
Yeah.
but it's going to be a quiet one, and that's why I'm trying to cram these years in. But like I was saying, and I don't ever want to fall into the trap of just being like doing things because of everyone else does it. But like,
Mm.
how often? And I've said this to Rochelle. We were walking through the whole of Westfield.
Yep.
We played the game a few times. It's like, short of them being like probably gay men who are in a relationship, look at how many men you see your dad's age walking together. Just two of them walking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we didn't see anyone. We didn't see any of them hanging out, walking around the shops together. And I don't know if it's a thing that they're scared of it being weird, if they're scared of it looking gay or whatever. They
Mm.
don't congregate together. And look, obviously we're in a shopping center. It's not like it was a Bunnings or something. But even then, it was like the only two men we saw walking together were two security guards, and they were on a job, of
Yep.
course. They were working. But other than that, we did not see anyone all the way through the food court, all the way up to Max Brenner, all the way up to both sides. Like we were looking for some things, and they were involved us walking through the whole shops. But we just tried to look and see if we could see anyone. It was like no one, you know.
Yeah.
And I found that just really fascinating. It's like at some age we just stop, and I think that's really sad because like your friends are your connection to the past. There's memories. Like my younger brother is like, as much as I dislike him in some ways, no, joking around. So he's all right. We've had some trouble. We've had some issues in the past. But
Yeah.
we're fine now. But
Like everyone has
he,
with their siblings.
yeah. But we both lived in Townsville for a time, like 2 years, and there's situations and memories where I literally could only talk to him about some scenarios that no one else in the world, like
Yeah.
I could be like, oh, does that guy remind you of Caden? And he's like, yeah, he does, you know. And we're
Yeah.
both like laughing about it because it's like a guy called Caden who was crazy up in Townsville, but no one else in the world could ever remember those two people, know those
Yep.
people, or to possibly be in those two situations where they know Caden. You know what I mean? Like for
Yeah.
us personally, it's like on the coast and then like in Townsville. And it's like my friends are that connection in my past as well. Like I'll remember things through them. We'll be able to both, like, how often do you mention like a hike or an adventure you went on, and they remember six things you don't remember, and you remember six things they don't remember, and you kind of
Mm.
both fill in the gaps for each other, and you like laugh together. And you're like, oh
That
yeah,
used to happen to me an awful lot. I don't know if you
yeah,
remember this, but I left that school at the end of year 7 and came back at the start of year 9. So I was gone for year 8. But people would mention to me Jeff, do you remember on the year 8 hike when we did this? Or
Yeah.
sometimes, and I would always say no, or I'd just be like, not really. Um, but sometimes they would say, Jeff, do you remember on the year 8 hike when you did this? And then I would question them. I would
That's
say,
right.
how do you remember me
Yeah.
doing that?
That's it. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. It's so funny because yeah, you kind of lament it where you leave.
Yeah.
Well, it was similar to me. I didn't go on the Darwin trip, so the
Yeah,
exact same thing for you. And like people are like, I have memories of you on the Darwin trip, and you're like, I
exactly.
didn't do that. Yeah, yeah. It's a weird phenomenon. And,
It seems like the type of thing you'd be at. I think they
yeah,
probably thought the same
yeah,
about me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Even there's actually this leads in well to. Have you heard of the spotlight effect?
No, no.
So the spotlight effect is we remember generally embarrassing things or things in general. Like for me, like it's and this is going to be a little bit of an arroganty thing for a second here, but like I'll explain. But like I remember in school, I would become age champion for athletics carnivals quite often up
Yep.
until year 8 and then I left. You
Yeah.
know, I went to different schools. But like I still talk to people and they're like, "Did you though?" Like I reckon I would have beaten you, and you're like, "Mother effer," you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they don't remember, and it's like, no, I used to be, but that was your thing. But because
Yeah.
you left, and there were 4 years after that, like people forget, and it's like, oh crap, like they forget the good things. But the good thing is they also forget the embarrassing things too. Like there's
Yeah.
embarrassing memories I have. Like I remembered wetting myself in Mr. Steen's class. This is like year 10, so don't worry. No, I pissed myself on the carpet in like maybe year 1 or
Right.
kindy. I don't know. I think I was just too scared to. I don't know. I just needed to go to the bathroom. But the
Yeah.
teacher, teachers used to get full passive aggressive with you if you
Yeah, and
like needed to
sometimes
go to
they
the
wouldn't want you
bathroom.
to go to the bathroom. It
Yeah,
was
yeah. You'd be
weird.
like, "Hey, sorry," you know. Like, didn't you go at recess? I think I was just scared of the anxiety of having that convo, so I just let myself. But like, no one remembers that. Actually, Nicole Cooper was like touching this puddle. She's like, "Sarah, it's wet here," and I was like, kind of walking over to talk, and she never figured out what that was. And then he knew exactly. He was like, "Oh, go to the office, mate."
Yeah.
But he was really good about it. It was so nice, and he probably would have just let me go to the
Was that,
bathroom.
yeah,
But
Jonesy is like that, yeah.
yeah, my older brother's a teacher, and he said he did that to someone. He felt so bad. Like a kid's
Yeah.
like, "But Sarah really didn't go." It's like, "Sir, no. We just
Yep.
went to the bathroom. We just had recess. You should have gone there." And then, surely enough, and it was like, "Oh
To,
crap."
to bring it back to Miss Newton again, sorry to cut you off there.
Sorry, no.
It's something that happened at the start of maybe year 11, I think it was, or maybe it was year 12. But actually it was definitely year 12 because Brad, a friend of ours, he said to Mr. Newton, he said, I find it weird that we will be leaving school in a year. A lot of us will be going out into the world and finding our own homes, having jobs. We'll be able to, live the life we are making for ourselves. We'll be making our own decisions and mistakes. We'll be having to work on a schedule. He said, I find it weird that we have to put our hand up to go to the toilet. Still in year 12.
Yeah.
Half of us
Yeah.
18. You know, we can legally drink alcohol.
Yeah.
And the teacher heard that. So Mr. Newton heard that and he said, okay, you're right. That is a dumbass thing to do. Like he straight up admitted it. He's like, that's so stupid that we do that. Guys, if you ever want to go to the toilet, just leave. Like, you don't have to ask me. Just say,
Yeah.
I'm going to the toilet or I need something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's so true. It is. It's a weird norm that we all kind of like this.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
schooling needs to change a lot. I have very strong opinions on this, but I think schooling needs to change a lot the way it is at the moment, at least in Australia, where we don't grow people up to be where they need to be once they finish school.
Yeah.
And we push people towards this end goal of year 12 and the HSC, saying, you know, we're just trying to prepare you for university. And then you get to university and it's nothing like what they were trying to prepare you for. It's just so backwards and wrong. I think it really needs to be changed. But I won't speak too much on that because I could go for literally hours on that one topic.
We do. I'm going to write that down though, because we will talk about that in
Yeah.
another. Because I would love to
Yeah,
talk
absolutely.
about that too, as well as the jail system. I think the jail system's another.
Oh, agreed. I was literally talking to a Swedish guy last night, and he
Yeah.
was mentioning that the way we think about prison is so weird to him.
Yeah.
Like they have prison where they can just go out and do
Yeah.
things, and
Yeah.
they still do have a job, and they have responsibilities, and they're
Mhm.
being
Yeah.
like made to relive life properly, and they're being able to transition into the life that they need to live rather
Mm,
than being punished for the life that they have lived.
yeah.
Which is such a weird thing. We would never do that. Like, we would never meet someone who's made a mistake in their life, even like, let's say it's a small mistake, nothing criminal, and we'd never punish them straight up for meet, like, just because we've met them. We would
Yeah.
we'd be like, oh, I'm kind of here for you. You know what I mean?
Mm, yeah.
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 Um,
No, it's amazingly.
that's a good segue into another thing that you mentioned, which was admitting vulnerabilities. Um,
Yes. Yeah.
I find that our group is very good at it, but there's still people, both in our group and outside of our group in the world, that are super bad at it, and it's not a toxic thing, but it's an unhealthy thing that's just rampant in society at the moment, or at least in our society. Um,
Yeah.
is that people aren't willing enough to admit that they're not smart enough to do something, or they're not smart enough at that thing to do something, or that they don't have the ability to do, a 10-kilometer jog, so they say, no, I just want to sit at home, it's, looks hot outside or something. They're not willing to say the things that are really on their mind, and I find that I'm super guilty of that myself. I just wanted to hear what you said. I've got some more points to make on that as well, but I just wanted to hear some of your ideas on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Like for me, I feel like I I often play it from the other person's point of view, and then I'm like, well, would I want to do that too? Like, not necessarily like treat people the way you want to be treated, but if
Mm,
I'm talking to someone and we're having a heart to heart, we're chatting for a few hours or something, we're really DMing, and I'm talking about some things that are quite heavy or deep in like some of the materials are a little bit darker to talk about. I feel like sometimes people will kind of they don't really open up back, and it's like, well, you don't really want to open up either. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't
yeah,
know if that makes sense. And it's like, if no one else was to open up around me, why would I open up around them? And it doesn't mean you have to go to every single person you run into, but if you're especially at our age, like a trusted individual, um, and I usually talk from
mm,
the idea of guys, because I think girls could definitely run into these issues or have these habits for sure too. But like
yeah,
for guys, I think we tend to be a little bit more
terrible at it.
on the egotistical side, where we want to come across as like we've got it all together. We
Yeah,
and like I'm not saying anything about anyone in particular, but like I guess one way I'd look at it is like that we all have weaknesses, and sometimes when friends have opened up about their weaknesses, I'm like, oh, this is a safe place where I'll tell
yeah,
them too. And like as an example for me, it's I want to work on anger issues to an extent. Not to say that I'm really bad at it, but while I'm angry, I still say things that I don't mean that I regret later. And I want to get
yep,
used to being angry and being able to be frustrated and pissed off, but not say crap that just comes out that makes no sense. And you know what I mean? After the
yeah,
combo, you regret it and you
yeah.
hurt
You
someone's
never
feelings.
really
And
mean it either. You just know it
yeah,
might
yeah,
hurt
yeah,
that person, and yeah, I
yeah,
think you're right. I think I've been very guilty of that in the past. I am trying to get better with it, definitely.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
Another thing that I've found is that with sharing with other people about emotions, I've been pretty bad about it, and more so because I've never been good at it with myself. I know that growing up, I was never taught to understand what emotion I was having. So I've noticed it more with previous girlfriends of mine. Or they'll
yeah,
ask what I'm feeling like, or um, you know, are you okay, kind of thing, and I'll say yes, no, and I don't know the answer. I don't know how I'm feeling because I never got taught to identify the thought or feeling that I'm having. I could say I'm not feeling good, but I couldn't figure out why. I might be
yeah,
upset, but I don't know if I'm sad about something or angry about something, or maybe I missed something. I couldn't figure that out, or what feeling I was having, because I think growing up as a male in the society that I grew up in, at least, I just wasn't taught how to come to terms with those emotions and identify what was happening for me.
yeah.
Do you find that as well, or is it maybe you've seen it in other people at all?
No, no, definitely. I think I had a very emotionally absent father. He was a good guy, but he was a bit he was very much like didn't know really know how to express his love. Didn't
Yeah,
wasn't too. outspoken about it. You could tell by what he did and the way that he lived that he did love us, but he
Yeah,
was
I
never
think I found the same thing.
verbalized or, yeah, and he wasn't like, I think he was very much the traditional head of the household. Had to keep, you go to work, you work hard. Wasn't a
Yep.
drinker really growing up, but he
Yeah.
also didn't really have any hobbies, like, which is kind of sad, and didn't have. He had one friend, and that friend like kind of passed away. And I think
Mm.
he never prioritized. And this is one thing that scares me. There was a study a while ago, and I could probably track it down if you ever want the source. But
Yeah.
it's a study on parents, and generally it follows the father for whatever reason. It follows the father, so it doesn't matter
Yep.
on the mum's influence. But if the father doesn't prioritize friendships growing up, you probably won't either. So if your dad had a lot of friends growing up, it's likely that you may have. And dad had no friends, by the way. Like, he didn't prioritize. So I've actively in life tried to choose things where I'm like, I don't want that to be my situation.
Yeah.
But I think the emotional absence. I was very lucky though, because I had an older brother who was very open and who kind of worked like a surrogate father and
Yep.
role model. Like, so when my friends, how you like, I used to have mates, and like there was one guy, like, he'd come to school and he's like, my dad can bench like 200 kilograms. My dad was never cool like that. Like, he was never.
Yeah.
I never went through my dad's like this superhero phase. Like, I never
Right.
had that.
I
I always loved.
did,
Yeah,
weirdly enough, because our dads were quite similar. I
yeah,
find, and they were friends as well, or at least in my opinion,
yeah,
they were friends.
yeah. They were. Yeah,
Um, but my dad, he was a scout when he was younger, and I remember looking up to how physically fit he was. I still do. I mean, I saw him
yeah,
on Instagram, maybe 6 months ago or so when I still had it.
yeah.
Um, he jumped up onto the roof beam, did like 10,
Yeah.
15 pull-ups, sorry, in like 5 seconds or 10 seconds, and I was like, I
Wow.
can't do 3. And
Yeah.
I still look up to him physically, but
Mm.
emotionally, I think that he didn't know what was going on. He didn't know how to deal with that either.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. He did his best. And I think you often look at your parents above them and you go, for what he had given to him, he did pretty damn well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and you're probably the same. And it's like one of them things where it's like, I want to be a father if I was to be a father, or friend, like as I was talking about, the figure
Yep.
that can have someone come over, because they've had a bad fight with their partner or something, and they just need somewhere to go, and their mum and dad aren't there. Or, we're older, we're 40 or something, and it's like they have
Yeah.
that house they can always come to that's home. Like, and to be that kind of figure, it's like, I think you need to be able to know when to have the emotional vulnerability to be able to understand and vent. And I don't want to be like, I don't want to like necessarily break down in front of like my future non-existent son.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to like not be able to cry. And I've always said like being emotionally, or just physically, like as an example, like
Yeah.
my dad was the type where he really did not like alcohol, didn't have time for it.
Yep.
And it was probably quite a disciplined bloke at times, like very disciplined towards us.
Yeah.
It would be the type where you just don't even think about drinking and getting him to give you a lift. And I've always said to like my dad, I'm like, look, you made us feel like really worried about that kind of thing. But what
Right.
would you prefer? Would you prefer a son that calls you at 3 a.m. and says, hey, I'm pretty drunk. I was meant to drive home. Can you come pick me up? I know I'm not meant to be drinking.
Mm.
Or a son who is worried that you're going to kick his ass, so he doesn't call you at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
and then tries to
Yeah.
drive home drunk with his friends. Like, I'd always prefer him to call me, but maybe my dad was the type where I would have called him and he would have came and picked me up. I don't know, but I never felt comfortable with doing that.
I
And
would
that's one of
always,
those.
yeah, I think I agree. I was the same situation where my
Yeah,
dad didn't drink, and I'd seen a lot of bad stuff with alcohol in my past.
yeah,
Um, and so I would try to find another way around it. I'd say maybe I'll just sleep at this person's tonight, or maybe I'll
yeah,
just try to walk home from, 15 k's away or something crazy.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, because I thought, that's the better way around than me just, you know, doing what I was going to do originally, because my plans have changed, and maybe I wasn't truthful straight up that I was going to drink because, people weren't accepting of that.
yeah,
But yeah.
yeah, straight up. Yeah, and you, it's rough as well because yeah, I think it's being able to find like those like we're talking about with the pie chart thing. It's also like the knowledge pie chart from people. So if someone like my dad, while he was good for teaching me how to do practical things, like for emotional, from an emotional standpoint, I'd look at other male figures in my life. So it was like some of the teachers I had, or my
Mm.
older brother, which is really good. Like, and yeah, he'd do the things like he'd be like, yeah, bowl cut. He'd tell you the things that your parents are too nice to tell you, which was
Yep.
kind of good in some ways because I would have been a really weird kid, but I was really, and I'm still a weird person. But he'd be like, "Hey, bro, like your frigging bowl cut looks ridiculous. I can't believe you got mum to do that. Hang on, let me send a photo of my friends." Like, a bit of a bully and roast the crap out of you, but it's true. Like your siblings do, your older ones specifically are the ones that tell you stuff that your parents are too kind or don't know about. So they, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? You have those older people in your life who can kind of morally or socially touch. You can use them as moral touch or social touchstones at different points in time where they'll be like, "Hey man, between you and I, girls hate it when you do that." Or I don't know, like as an example,
Mm.
my dad lived in Muswellbrook for a few months because he was
Right.
teaching, and mum really missed him
Yep.
because he was doing teaching like distance, like he was getting paid okay for it. But they'd call once a week, and they were really missing each other at that point in time. And we used to have those little, okay, it's a very specific now, but you know those little beanie kids, those
Yeah.
little
Oh,
beanie teddies?
absolutely. Everyone was
Yeah,
into them.
we my mum, so we had a few. We loved them. We played with them all the time. And my mum bought my one for my dad. And think about the kids' context. I don't. There was a rhino character. Had a
Yep.
little rhino horn. It was really cool. And I was like, holy crap! And we had like a teddy bear's picnic. So I was like, I'm taking that to school, and we're throwing it around all day. And my sister eventually came up to me. Like at some point, she saw us playing, and she came over. And my older sister, she's like 8 years older. She saw us in the playground. She goes, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's mum and dad." So look, it's a teddy. And
Yep.
I showed her, and this teddy has like on the front of it, it has "feeling horny?" question mark. It's a little rhino. And
That's
for us,
hilarious.
we had no idea that that was there. And it was really flipping lucky
Yeah.
that she saw that, that none of the kids saw, that none of the parents or teachers saw it, because that would have been a massive frigging hiccup.
Yeah.
But it was just like that older sister to be like, "What are you doing, you idiot? Put it back in your bag." And you're like, "Oh, crap." I didn't understand at the time. And she explained later on. It
Yep.
was just one of those things where it's like, I had no idea that feeling horny meant that. Like, I was just like, it's another one of the toys. Like, it's the same size. It could sit right next to them all. And mum just got it for dad as a joke. Like, it was going to sit on like the cupboard. It wasn't meant to be like this thing that was taken around in public at
Yeah.
all. But it's like an older sibling. Like, there's so many moments in my life where I'm like, they helped me correct myself from. No, I probably could have been a semi okay person, but I think I would have been a very different person. They'd pull me up. I'd write stuff on. There was a stage in my life where I thought it was really cool to be a bit of a edge lord on Facebook, and I'd post shit online and try to really stir up trouble and get into fights and create meme pages and stuff. And my
Mm.
older brother and sister would often pull me up on that stuff and be like, look, man, like obviously not too bad, but like you carry, they used to say you carry the Muller name when you do that. Whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
you carry the Muller name. Like, if you go and ask girls for nudes, or you dishonor them. Don't
Yeah.
just dishonor us. You don't just dishonor yourself. You dishonor all of us. Like, and like even
Yeah.
used to say it, like describe it for teachers. Like you'd go through school and they'd be in a few years before and they'd set really good examples and the teachers would love them. And then you'd come in as the
Oh.
third Muller, and
Yep.
it's like if you ruin the reputation like that, and then verse I ruin it for Ryan, and Ryan would have a controversial presence.
Yep.
Sometimes he'd be quite good to teachers and they'd love him, but other times it was like, oh, I was kind of like mediocre, I
I
think,
found
compared to my
that
older siblings.
sometimes hard to live up to.
Yeah, same.
Because I with my older brother, he was extremely not just well-rounded, but he could pick up something up and be good at it within hours.
Yeah,
And I remember some of the schools I'd go to because him and I were the only ones that went to most of our schools together. Um, I would get into his year group a few years later, if I rejoined the school, and they'd be like, "Oh, you must be amazing at like
oh,
rugby." And I was like,
yeah.
"Brush, I'm so shit at rugby." Or they'd say, "You must be amazing at softball or cricket or soccer." And I was like, "How was he good at this many things?" And I would be trying to live up to him of these expectations people had set for me because that's how it was before me. That I'd be constantly chasing this idea of what I should have been like, I guess. Um, but yeah, I almost wish I had it more with, like you mentioned, with carrying the Muller name. I wish I had it more with carrying my last name because it never really meant so much to our family, I guess, because
Yeah,
half the people were adopted, so it was like they didn't understand what it meant to be part of that, and they didn't carry it down so much to their kids. I kind
yeah,
of wish I had that.
yeah. Like the legacy, yeah. And I think you can always create it, with your like that culture and legacy, yeah. Where it's like this is our team. When you put that And it sounds like I don't know. I think I sometimes like to over exaggerate things. So it's like it's not that, but you
Hmm.
put that vest on, or you put that when you wear that jersey, like you do the good, and you don't have to be perfect, but you just try your best and be like, all right, how do I reflect my family
Yeah.
in a good way, or look at what my do slightly better than what my parents did in some ways.
That
But
makes me wonder if I ever set any expectations or low expectations, because I have younger siblings and I've never really thought about that.
yeah,
Because, I was vice captain and the leader of the SRC group, and I
mm,
was, in meetings like 4 or 5 times a week at school, and I was setting up events at the school. I wonder if I ever set an expectation. I never meant to if I did, but I never saw myself as someone to look up to. Even while I
yeah,
was doing those things, I always felt like I was more trying to make up for the person I'd been in the past, I guess.
yeah. It's certainly fascinating, hey, because you start to look back and you're like, whoa, all those times like I
Yeah.
could have been a. It's hard as well to be consistent and congruent because it's like there's
Yeah.
a younger version of you who probably looks up and is like, either proud or upset right now, or kind of like, oh, you can do better. You know what I mean? Like either way, they might. I think we all kind of envisioned ourselves as being certain people at different points in our lives,
Yeah.
and yeah, I don't know. Like I definitely look at it from the point of view of like I haven't felt that for a long time. Like there's someone who looks up to me either. There were stages in my life where like I got to feel that, like, through camps and stuff like that. But I never had that younger sibling or younger. I think it was kind of more like it
Mm.
was from the top down. Like Tannen would often be like, you kind of didn't want to do him necessarily proud,
Yep.
but you'd also be like, I don't want to be the one who stuffs any of this up. And
Yep.
he told me later in life, he's like, yeah, look, I was smoking and had a few drinks sometimes, and
Yeah.
told me some of the stuff he used to do, and it wasn't bad stuff. It was more
No.
self-destructive than on damaging anyone else. But he was always said like he was very guarded with Ryan and I. Like he never wanted to set a good example or make that out to look cool. Like he never
Right.
tried to make that. So it was
Yeah.
almost like a anti thing where he's like, I don't want you to think that this is what makes someone a cool or a man. And if my dad like yeah,
Yeah.
he was a pretty he get grumpy sometimes. I remember there was a time where like he was pretty frustrated and had a pretty big blow up at everyone. And Ryan and I were living up in Towns at the time. And I remember he like kind of pulled us aside and walked us both back outside and was like, boys, you can never end up like that, okay? You need to kind of like basically
Mm.
pulled us aside and said, don't be like that. Like, like
Yep.
what he did, that was irresponsible. It wasn't right. It's going to be hard because you've been brought up with it. You learn to argue in the way that you see, like you see
Yeah.
your parents argue in a certain way, you'll often adopt that, and it's hard not
I
to click that out because you've grown up with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. My mum and my stepdad would fight all the time. They
Yeah,
were infamous in the family for breaking up every, couple of weeks, or
yeah,
divorcing and getting back together. And it's like, whoa, what the hell? And it would happen so many times that my brother and I were kind of used to it, but at the same time, we would get upset and we'd be like, shit, like, how do we deal with this? Because I remember once we were leaving at like, 11 o'clock at night. It was night. We're leaving our family home and we're like, the shit's going on. We just had to pack a bunch of our clothes in a bag and leave the house real quick. And my brother was like, you are never getting back with this guy ever again. And then she did, 20 times more.
yeah,
But it's something you don't think about so much as an example you're setting, or that they have actively tried to set sometimes. But you
mm,
kind of look up to them as an older sibling, and that
yeah,
is how they've come across to you, and you want to be more like them a lot of the time.
yeah. I don't think they realize how much influence they garner, or just people in your life. Like if it's
Mm.
not your sibling, it's probably someone else that you do sports with, or you know. Sometimes I feel like it's almost like for me, like Mr. Hogben at school was kind of like when Tannen was no longer like he lived in Newcastle and stuff, and I didn't see him. So
Yep.
I would generally just latch to different people and like love their style like for a long period of time, and then like until I saw someone again. Like yeah, it's kind of funny that we stop at some point like using them as like moral guidances and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I really I wish we had more people to kind of look up to now in our older life, like mentors and stuff. But it's hard to
Mm.
find them without it being like a weird
Yeah,
or
it
like something
feels
like
like
a
it.
paywall.
Yeah, it seems like you would be a bit weird to follow someone around at this age,
Yeah,
in life. And there are people I'd love to just talk to more often and be like, you are still a mentor to me.
yeah.
But they've got their own lives to live, and I wouldn't want to invade that at all.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. And it's funny because it's like I wouldn't mind being a mentor at some stage, but
Yeah.
I still don't feel ready now. Like, you know what I mean? It's still a
Yep.
development I need to go through. Like, I have a goal to read all of the books on the bookshelf. You
Yep.
know, it's like even like with this podcast and in general, I've talked around. Let's do a podcast with a few.
Yeah.
There's another person I want to do a podcast with, and there's a weird part of me that's like always like, and I don't. Have you heard of the Maximizer?
No.
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
I was just getting a call from someone. The maximizer versus satisfier effect. Oh no,
Oh.
personality trait. Oh, it's just two different types of people. Like Rochelle tends to be more of a maximizer. I'm more of a satisfier, and it's just generally when you make decisions, do you make decisions based off of, do you wait for the best 100%, 100%, like the best of the best, like opportunities for something to happen, or do you wait for like something that kind of meets your needs and then you go with that until like maybe a later date? And Rochelle tends to be
Ah.
maximizer, which is great because she often, when she selects something very well,
Yeah.
but it also inhibits her a bit because, like, as an example, she might be waiting for this particular gym that ticks off all
Yep.
of these this particular, like, you know, I need it to be this cheap, this close.
Yeah.
And until she gets those parameters met, she won't go out to a gym in the meantime, and she'll wait. And like that's a bad example because she like will still exercise and stuff, but that would be an example of like, well, I'll be like, all right, this gym meets the needs for now, but it doesn't it doesn't meet all of my needs, but it's going to be the
Yep.
closest thing. And then in 6 months time I might be able to reschedule and rethink and maybe do something different. And the idea is like some people, you got to
Huh.
be, you got to kind of jump between them. It's not you should be one way or the other all the time, but knowing
Yeah.
which ones to be like, all right, I'm not settling for this one, and then which ones it's like, all right, this is a category where I'm going to really focus on making sure that I select it quite slowly.
I
And
think I think I am maximizer as well, actually. Until I
yeah,
get pissed off enough, and then I'm
yeah,
the opposite, and I'm just like,
yeah.
fuck it, let's go, let's do it.
It's hard. It's hard because I've wanted to do this podcast and I've been meaning to write to this guy back and be like, I'm going to do it. But there's still a part of me that's like, what? And I'm maximizing at that point where I'm like, what happens if I read a book after that? And I'm like, oh, damn it, I wish I had brought up that point. Or, that would have been so important. And there's a part in my head that's like, I will feel ready once I do this. But I don't think
Mm.
yet. I don't know if we ever do. I don't know if we
No,
ever
there's
do. I
never
feel
a
like you
point where
always
you realize that you are. It's just you
have to
become
cut
more
off.
ready
Yeah.
as you, and you discover it after you've already done that thing that you
Yeah.
were trying to prepare for. I find it with things that I don't see myself as a role model, but sometimes I can share mistakes I've made in the past or ideas that I might have with someone and say, you could try this. This is something I wish I always tried when I was in that situation. And I know looking back at it would have worked 100 times better than what I tried.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I've provided help, but I didn't ever see that I was going to be able to provide help for something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's right. And it's like you can make mistakes so your loved ones don't have to. Sometimes they'll still make those mistakes, but you've made that mistake yourself and you're like, "Hey, look, tried this before. It's a real shit show." And that's where I was like, I guess for me like the siblings kind of thing. Like I saw what
Yeah.
happened when Tannen tried to sneak out while he was grounded and it did not end well for him. It's like you see that and you're like, okay, maybe I don't try that approach. Hey,
Yeah.
mum, I know you grounded me, but can I go to the party, please? Like
Yeah.
you figure out ways to kind of, and it's lucky you see your sister do it too, and you're like, oh, actually, she did that in a funny way, or she did that in a bit of a weird, like, oh, she should have done that, or you just know, oh, how do they react when I'm going to bring a girl home? Well, there's no mystery there anymore because someone else has already done it and they've made the mistake for you. And I look for that in life too. It's like, you and I would have both made plenty of mistakes. And if we both stay guard, I guess back to that vulnerability thing,
Mm.
if we're both too scared to be vulnerable, then yes, for the moment, I'll look strong and I'll look like a guy who's top dog. And I
Yep.
might even be able to swindle it in a way where it's like, hey, guess what? I have, I'm the winner here. But in that moment, I also lose an opportunity to learn something
Yeah.
valuable or, walk away from that conversation with a new insight. Even like, might even be depression. Maybe I'm not battling depression. Maybe I never will battle depression. So
Mm.
I might feel that I don't have a need to talk to anyone, but I might have a close friend who has it at some point.
Yeah.
And like, it sounds silly, but I'm like trying to read out of my normal scope of like, so as
Yep.
an example, I'm trying to read books. I have a few books on my Audible at the moment. I've got to read them still or listen to them.
Yeah.
They're about being widows.
Yeah.
Just for what that's like. I'm not a widow or widower, but if I ever run into one, I can genuinely like really, I guess not even understand, but be a little bit closer to trying to be able to support someone who
Yeah.
goes through that. Because I genuinely will meet, whether it's my mum, if my dad passes away first, like I will run into a widow or widower at some point, and I'll be
Mm.
able to kind of have a little bit more empathy for them. And I think like yeah, the vulnerability thing is huge. Like being able to put yourself like being able to say like these are the things. I don't think you're necessarily going to walk away and those people are like that guy's my role model.
Yeah.
But you might even I we used to talk about it at a youth group and used to say like you'd have friends in your life and yes, not everything is going to be perfect about anyone, but they might have little traits where you can compliment them and bring that thing out enough in them
Yep.
and kind of show, hey, we recognize that cool trait and we love it when you do this and encourage them to do it more, which is good for them, but good for everyone else too.
Yeah.
And then you don't necessarily destroy their worser traits, but you just like cheer on the better traits so much more that like when they do kind of like, when they do cool things. But I also like I'll find traits and I actively make it a normalized like kind of stealing other people's traits. So they're not
Yeah.
necessarily a role model, but they kind of are. Like
Yeah.
it's like kind of like bonding with your dad. Like
I think
you
it's
don't
good.
you don't call it bonding, but you'll be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we're gonna go fishing." Because the second you
Yep.
tell your teenage son, "Let's go bonding," they're like, "Dad, ew, that word.
Yeah.
Oh, don't say that." But if you're like,
Yuck.
"Hey, yeah, yeah, hey, Dad, like if your dad takes you fishing, yeah, it's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, cool. Good to know. Yeah, nice to meet you." And I think it's the same with like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't call. I think it'd be weird, and my friend might even take it the wrong way, or it
Yeah.
could potentially take if I said you're my role model. But
Yep.
if I emulate some of their traits or like some of their traits and go, hey, it's got some gems in there. They've
Yeah.
read some books I haven't. I've read some books they haven't. They've met some people I haven't. It's like we're kind of sharing. We're sharing our sources and knowledge, and I think it can really excel quite quickly in your learning by just sitting and talking to people and kind of
Yeah.
hashing out different ideas and things you disagree with. And yeah, I don't know.
I think in speaking about the vulnerability side of things,
Yeah.
and role model side of things, I found that I was on the opposite side of that, for or at least the biggest time for me ever, earlier this year, and I never saw myself getting into this or this happening to me, but I found I had problems with anxiety, and previous years up till now in my life, people have asked me if ever had problems with anxiety, and I didn't really understand what anxiety was, and so I just say no, a blanket statement. Until this year, I actually ended up in hospital one night,
Shit.
and I still didn't know what was happening. I thought I was having a heart attack. So I ended up going to hospital, and I was in there, and the doctor was like, "Look, you're pretty like not overly healthy, but you're healthy enough. This isn't anything to worry about. It's you're having an emotional response to your life at the moment. You're having an anxiety attack." And I just didn't understand it. I thought I was literally dying. I thought I was going to drop down on the floor from a heart attack in like half an hour or something. Um, and I found that I had to reach out to people and understand more how anxiety worked for them and how to handle it, and what anxiety really was, because I didn't have a good idea of it in my head. And it was the first time I've ever found that I've had uh problems really identifying it, where I denied it for so long that it became such a big problem.
Yeah.
Because I've had problems with depression in
Mm.
earlier years, but I was able to identify it at the time. Whereas this was something I just didn't know, and then it struck so hard, and I was like, "Holy shit!" And I
Yeah.
had to deal with it and face it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the first time I've ever been on the opposite side, where I wasn't trying to help someone, where I was like, "Shit, I desperately need help."
Yeah. And from being in that situation, ideally, when you meet someone else, and you will, like, it's possible that even like, well, I say it to Rochelle with, it's important. For me, I date Rochelle, and she's a very strong woman. Like, she's
Mm,
very, very, very stable, very,
yeah,
very like, she's unwavering. She never really changes. She'll happily, like, I'll go to a party, and I'll come back and she's just content reading her book, sitting down, just
yep,
chill. She's genuinely like one of my biggest role models without making it weird. Don't tell her that I said that. She's like, yeah, just this Zen human being. I don't know who made her like that, but she's just so chill and comfortable in her own skin with whatever's going on at any moment. And
yeah,
yeah, like I don't know. I think, but I often say like it's important with even with my friend, it's like don't just pick someone that you get along with well or you find attractive necessarily when you're dating them. Like also make sure that there's someone where there's times in your life when they'll be able to kind of hold some you'll take turns kind of holding each other up, propping each other up. Yes, like it's bad for you to both lean on each other,
yeah,
but you should both basically be happy without each other. But also like when it comes to being around I don't know, like it's like I've had moments where I've needed Rochelle and I've been able
Mhm.
to rely on her to lean on her, and vice versa. And I'm saying
Yeah.
the same with friends as well. It's like there might be times where I'm going through an anxious, time in my life or something. Well, and I'll come to you because I know that you've had experience with that, and I know, oh, this is someone that I can talk to and rely on when it comes to those things, because I know that he's not just talking from a point of, oh, well, I guess, or one, you've
Yeah.
genuinely been through it. And while we might have different experiences or different ways to cope with it, it's
Yep.
like you still know that you're like not alone. And I think so many people, because there is that emotional guard where they don't tell each other those things.
Mm.
I don't know. Like I guess the way I attribute it, and this is like just the way I see it, it's never like I like reading a variety, and you're the same. We collect information from multiple sources and try to compare them and just trying to figure stuff out. I like to
Yeah.
be intellectually not vulnerable, but I guess intellectually open to a point where it's like I can take things in and be quite open minded at this age. And it
Yep.
might come across as you're foolish because you're asking people so many questions or playing the idiot in the room and asking the dumb questions for almost every topic. But I don't know. I think there's like, yeah, like as an example, like I don't think there's any issues with my relationship at the moment, but I still love reading relationship books. And there's a book on my bookshelf at the moment that says like what to do when you're falling out of love. And a few friends
Yeah.
have like commented on that. And they're like, "You okay, man?" Like I just noticed that book that says, what to do when you're falling
Mm.
out of love. And it's like, no, like I don't have any issues at the moment, but there might be something down the path when I
Yeah.
do run into that. And it's so much better for me to have kind of like taken that on board at a young age when there are no problems, rather than, oh shit, we're talking about divorce. Because
Yeah.
often people pull those books up when they're starting to talk about divorce or financial issues, or they're starting to fight about stuff.
Yep.
And it's like you should have, like, same with baby books. A lot of the parenting books, it's very hard to start thinking about being the best parent possible 9 months before the baby's due. It's like
Yeah.
this stuff should be thought about years beforehand. Everything, not everything you do, but in a lot of things you do, it should be like thinking about, oh, what
Yeah.
would my future son want to know that I did in this situation? And like trying to like hold yourself accountable that way through a non-existent version of your future son. So for me, it's like always like when I had a job that I needed to walk away from,
Mm.
I had to talk about bullying. And it's like, if I ever told my son, hey, son, tell the bully to F off, or tell the bully to just, go stick it to the bully, and then never did it myself, then am I really kind of living that, you know what I mean? Like, am I actually really being true to myself and what I'd want to know that I did in that situation, if that makes sense? I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm probably rambling a little bit, but
No, I definitely
yeah,
agree. To touch a little bit on something we mentioned earlier as well. Something you
yeah,
mentioned earlier was how, you don't see two people our dad's age, walking around in the shops together. And I
yeah,
think that age group does have a lot of problems with um anxiety, depression, um, and things that are mentally strugglesome, or I don't know a good word for that, but are mentally challenging for them, but they don't know how to tackle that, and talk to other people and be honest and open about themselves.
yeah,
um I think it's very important that we as a generation try our hardest so that at least the generation below us can learn from the shitty mistakes that we make, rather than just getting brick walled by the people above us. um where we
yeah,
can say, we've tried to be open, here's a better way to do it in the future. um a big thing for me is, people older than us, they get to an age where it becomes, like you mentioned, it's a bit weird to hang out with another man so much, and they get worrisome that people look at them a certain way. I think it's important that we do continue to have those relationships as we grow older,
yeah,
and become people that need more help, but just
yeah,
haven't been talking about it for so many years. Like generations go past where, this has happened in the past, where we
yeah,
need to be people that are open and say, we're having problems, we're going to have a guys get together, even if we're 40 years old, and we'll just go out and walk around the shops and talk about something, or go to the lake or something,
mm,
um where it's not a weird thing. And then
mm,
people younger than us, or generations below us, or other people our age even, will look at that and say, okay, it's a normal thing to do,
yeah.
let's start doing this because we need to do it.
That's right. Yeah. No, I definitely agree. I think yeah, no, you hit the nail, yeah, hit the nail on the head right there. I couldn't, yeah. I think it's one of those things, it could hyper like in some ways, in theory, it could be quite hard to implement. But I think if you actively think, I don't want to be like that. Like I want to create an environment. I think you could very easily do it. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if naturally our whole generation will kind of be different to it. I think a lot of our generation will just kind of probably follow suit and be exactly like their parents. And that's not a
Yep.
bad thing necessarily. Like it's worked for all of society, for human history.
Yeah.
But I think I think there's a lot of value in being someone who's well rounded, who still has access to people their own age and gets to catch up on regular hangouts. And I often say to mates, like I used to have a friend, Dill, and I
Mm.
love him. I love him now, but we used to have some contention at different points in time. And I only say this because I'd say it if he was here
Yep.
too. But it got to a stage where we were best mates or very good friends at the time, and then
Mm.
I kind of introduced him. Like I was dating Rochelle, and then I introduced him to his partner at that point in
Yep.
time, and we got to a point where I remembered saying to him, I said, I don't want to hang out just when our partners hang out. I want to hang out as well, like
Yeah.
independently of our partners. Like we're mates, we hang out. But it turned into exactly that, to a point where
Yep.
Thursday nights was kind of like, hey, we'll catch up on Thursday nights every now and then, like
Yeah.
every couple of weeks.
Couples
We'd
night.
go to the movies, yeah, and then like similar thing. He'd be like, oh, he'd start to be like, oh no, I'm gonna go and hang out with her today. Like I'm gonna
Right.
go sit outside her work at Donut King.
Yeah.
And it's just this weird thing where it was like when we did hang out, it felt inauthentic because I was like, we're only hanging out because our girlfriends hang out, and I used to call it like getting walked by our girlfriends. So it's like, do you want to put a leash on us, Nate? Like, like, are you? And
Yeah.
I'm such a stubborn coot as well. Like, I love
Yeah.
Rochelle, but I hear a lot of stories about like it kind of gets to a point in a lot of people's lives where the woman kind of controls everything socially, and then the guy kind of tags along. And I'm like, I don't want to
Yeah.
be like that. Like, I
I
want to
say
be
that a
mates with
lot.
people because I'm mates with people. I don't want to be the one who like. She's not my secretary. She's not my admin. Like,
Mm. Mm.
I will overly. I say it to a lot of my friends. I joke around with them and shit stir them. I love them to pieces, by the way. But it's just like I'll say to them, I'll be like, dude, what is going on? We haven't seen you for a while. And it
Yeah.
does. It gets, sometimes it is like you have to. I think it's nice to break past that as well and be like, we're not hanging out just because our partners are friends. We also catch
Yep.
up because we catch up. I've got to get better at it too. I think I've got to organize. I was saying to my partner like she should organize. We should both work on organizing some events that are like, and not because it's a sexist thing, but
Mm.
get the girls all hanging out together and get all the guys doing some things like
Yeah.
because I think it's really important for the both genders to have a lot of loyalty for each other as well. Because we had a friend group before this,
Mm.
and a lot of the guys were the types who didn't really get along with too many people in high school or have too many friends, and
Yeah.
quite not too sure about themselves. So when it came to like a new girl coming into the group, who kind of knew her power and used it
Yep.
used it in the wrong way, used their power in the incorrect way. She'd lead a lot of guys on, but she'd also play them against each other. And because
Yeah.
they didn't have any loyalty away from like the fact that they just hung out like superficially,
Yep.
they would all happily dog each other and like stab each other in the back.
Yep.
And they were falling over each other for this girl, and it was just really painful to watch. I think there was due to the lack of like security and the lack of loyalty between those friends.
Yeah.
Like one would break up. Like as an example, like my friend broke up with that girl eventually. One of them dated her, then broke up with her. None of those guys ever messaged him after they broke up.
Yep.
Like none of them ever did, and it was just like, oh well, that was. And then like another friend of mine broke up with his misso, and like in that week, 3 people had gone and messaged that girl in the
Yeah.
week that she broke up with him, and I was just like, I don't know. To me, like it was like I always think back and I'm like, had they known each other a little bit less superficially and more
Oh yeah.
closely, you wouldn't do that to a close mate. Generally speaking, you
Yeah.
wouldn't you wouldn't do that to a close mate.
Well, it's not a healthy and strong relationship when
No,
you can do that
no,
to each other.
yeah,
I think it's one of those things where you've got to decide sometimes whether you're going to yoke yourself with those people and decide you're going to keep hanging out with them.
yeah,
And maybe make the relationship stronger, but you've got to actively try to do that, or you've got to say, no, I don't want to do this thing. I'm going to go find my own people.
yeah.
When there's group activities, maybe I'll find someone else to talk to in the group, or maybe I'll just find a different group.
Oh
Um,
heck yeah,
because
yeah,
being somewhere that you shouldn't be is not just bad for you, but it's also bad for the people that have to be around you in that situation as well all over the time.
yeah, yeah. It can be a bit yeah. No, I agree. It is some. It's funny, hey, because like I think there's some people talk about like they call it their hinge or their gut feeling, where it's like they
Mm.
get a bad feeling about someone and it's their intuition. And
Yeah.
I like I'm weird. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you'll be able to answer on this one because I reckon that I'd love to hear your opinion. I find people sometimes they're like, I don't like so and so, or they dislike someone, or they hate a particular person or a particular vibe on a person,
Mm,
or they just decide that that particular thing isn't their style, or whatever it is, or some activity, or whatever it is. When it comes to a new thing coming into their life, it's like if they get a gut feeling that they won't like it or don't like it, they just shut it straight out and say no, like not even going to give that a chance, or not. I'm not going to
yeah.
let that in. I'm not going to. And I think like I don't know because I've sometimes had that too. I've had that bad that voice in my head that says this person's bad, this person's not going to work, this person is a bad bet, and then sometimes being like, I'm going to push against that anyway. Or maybe it's a weird barbecue or an awkward barbecue. And I kind of feel it like sometimes on the other end as well, throwing events. It's like, I'll have a few friends over. And sometimes I'm like, this isn't what I want to do necessarily, where it might be like, say, for example, like a bonfire night with just the boys. And that could be awkward as hell. You know what I mean? Like we could all hang out and it could be very flippin' awkward and a bit uncomfortable at the start where we're kind of, slowly getting into the convos without any of the girls there and stuff that usually kind of glue us together.
Yeah.
It's like that could be very, very kind of, there could be it could be a very rocky start and there could be a lot of turbulence while we're trying to like kind of work our way into figuring out how things work.
Yep.
But it could also give so much reward in the long run. You know what I mean? Like I'm so glad we did that night. We it was awkward at first, but maybe for that first hour it could have been awkward, but after that, like you genuinely get some good connections and some good memories of those guys, and that you become a lot tighter. Or but it is that awkward first part where it's like, do I ditch it or do I go along with it? How do you cope between like knowing when it's intuition or when it's actually like, no, I probably just got to give this one a chance and roll with the punches and see what happens? Like, do you have any systems or?
I find that for myself personally, I am not great at it all the time, but if it's an idea or an objective that I do disagree with the final product, I won't take place. Say for example, everyone said they're gonna do something that I wasn't okay with, something maybe
Yeah,
dangerous or illegal, and I'd be like, look, I'm just not going to take part. It probably sounds like it'd be
yeah,
a fun journey, but the result is the result, you know?
mm,
But then there's situations where, with people, for example, um, I find that I don't make, and some people I've met that I thought, oh man, I thought they were a great person, ended up being terrible people, or they've done terrible things, and are still people, I guess. But I find that I reserve judgment, and one of the great quotes I like from Gatsby, Great Gatsby, was reserving judgment is a matter of infinite hope. You've got hope that this person will always be someone, like no matter how many levels of bad you see in them, that maybe there's something deeper inside of them. Um, and I find that I try to reserve judgment as much as I can to a person before I even realize I've made a judgment.
yeah,
Um, because when we meet a new person in the group, I'll often rather not know how to talk to them for the first few times we meet them, but after a while I get to know them more. But sometimes we meet a new person and I'll have fun with them and be like, oh, that person was a great person to hang out with. I
yeah,
had a lot of fun playing this game or beer pong or whatever that game was or whatever I did. And then someone else will say, oh, I just got bad vibes from them. It's like, oh,
mm,
I gave him a chance though. But like, you know what I mean? Like you have to give
yeah,
someone a chance for them to show the good part of them. But if you give them enough chances that you realize you've made a judgment without you actively making a judgment, I think that's when you realize maybe you need to step away from a situation or a person. Um, Personally, that's how I feel about it.
yeah, yeah. It'd definitely be hard. How do you go if like if you find that quite a few friends have bad vibe? Like, do you ever? Is there a certain point? Because I used to be the same. I used to be like, doesn't matter if my friends like I used to say if I hated everyone that my friends hated, I'd have no friends.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Because
I
every
agree.
single person somewhere I know doesn't like someone. You know what I mean? Somewhere and that was obviously when I was like on the like
There.
especially on where we live. We live yeah, obviously in between Sydney and Newcastle. And if
Mm,
you don't know someone, you know 10 people who do, and you know what I mean? Like
yep.
after I follow that quote up with, and you probably know someone who dislikes every single one of them. So it's
Yep.
very hard. There's people who are like, if my friend doesn't like you, I don't like you either. And it's like I
Yeah,
can get it.
no.
I can get it. There's definitely some things that you can't forgive, or you're that close and intimate with
Yeah.
that person that it would be terrible for you to take that person in after what they did, or varying levels of it.
Mm.
But then there's also the people where you ask them and you peel further into it. And you're like, why don't you like that person? And they just go, bad vibes.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah,
like, well, is this worth me also, like, just because you get
yeah,
bad vibes off them, is this worth me also being like, I'm gonna let go, you know what I mean, of this
yeah,
person? Like, and I don't know, like it's hard because it's like you don't want to come across as ignorant to them and be like, oh well, I'm going to invite them back anyway, because I think that's kind of can be very rude. You can tackle it in different ways, like
yeah,
different levels of sensitivity and nuance. But yeah, I don't know. It's fascinating just to see like the other way that people kind of like have, how they tick off in that system where it's like, oh,
yeah,
because I can understand that both probably can be or should be applied at different points in time. There's times where it's like I can't hate that, but you know what I mean. There's
yeah.
friends as well. Where it's like they're lovely people. They might be really cool,
Yep.
but you just like they're just so their opinions are so strong. Like you'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, what do you think of the new Uncharted movie? And I fucking hated it. And you're like, what? Like, but they
Yeah.
just like there's hot or there's boiling point and there's
Yep.
freezing cold. There's nothing in between. There's
Yep.
no there's no
They're
neutral, like, okay,
they're
let's
not
kind of
able
like,
to be open. Yeah.
yeah. It's
I
just
find,
I
I
hate it
mean,
or I love it, and that's it. And they're
we've
like that
had
with
people
people,
in the group before, and I won't mention names, but we've had
right?
people in the group before that I thought, this person's great. They're lovely to hang out with. I've had a lot of fun with them. I'd like to see them in a group setting more often. I don't know why other people don't like them. And
Yeah,
we've also had the people in the group where I've said that, and then later on they've done something fucking dumb, and I've been like, okay, that is where I draw the line, and I'm okay with us not hanging out with this person anymore. We recently had that situation. Um,
yeah,
but up until that point, I love them, and I've given them all the chances in the world. And
yeah,
if they backstab everyone by doing something that no one's okay with, it's like, okay, well, look, I enjoyed the time we hung out. No more of it.
yeah,
It
yeah,
comes it
yeah.
comes to a point where you've got to draw that line.
I think yeah, it's one of those things you learn as you get older. Like back in the day, I felt like and maybe we all kind of fall victim to it just as general, humans and sometimes narcissistic individuals, just as humans in general. Like, we can be kind of like, we have God's touch or the voice of God where we can kind of like, you hear that someone had a fight with someone and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
look, man, it's okay. It's all good. Like, roll the punches, man. I'm sure you guys will be fine. But then when you have it with some, and I've never been the type to be like, if I hate this person, you have to hate them too. I've never ever had that on someone else. I've sometimes told them, like, expressed why I don't hang out with someone anymore. I'll be like, yeah, that person was a bit of a douche, or this happened, and I'll be
Yep.
quite specific. I'll give them genuine points. I won't be wishy washy about these particular things happened,
Yeah.
and I'm not gonna be there for that anymore. But at the same time, it's like there's this funny like kind of conundrum where, and I've kind of felt it happen to me, and I'm like, that's probably what it used to feel like. I'll have a issue with someone, and back in the day, like, I'll have a problem with someone, and I'll talk to someone, and they'll kind of reason, be like, man, I think you just need to think of it differently. This person's fine. They're all good. And you feel like you're being gaslit a bit. You're like, this person genuinely did something that's quite shitty towards me.
Yeah.
And this person's not getting it. And in their head, this person can do no wrong in some ways. And you're
Yeah.
just sitting there like, oh, whatever. But then when that person inevitably also gets burnt down the track too,
Yep.
suddenly it's like, oh, like they just changed. And it's like, no, like, you know what I mean? And I'm trying not to do that for other people too, because I've noticed
Yeah.
I've done that too. Like people come up to me and be like, I've had issues with this person,
Mm.
and I'll try and play like like kind of like as if though like it's an animal that I have experience with in that domain. Oh, that's my domain. Like that
Yeah.
person's fine. They take a while to get around. And then you kind of peel it back later on. You're like, oh no, that person was genuinely treating that person differently. I don't, and sometimes you don't see it in different areas as well. Like there might be someone, like as an example, I threw something recently, and I found out that there was this girl who would never in any scenario ever
Mm.
do anything to anyone who was like me, myself, or Rochelle or anything.
Yep.
But there was a guy at the party, and she was basically threatening to beat the crap out of this dude. Like
Right.
absolutely threatening, like I'm gonna punch his head in, see you, swearing,
Yep.
swearing and stuff at him. And like I had no idea that this was going on because she would have never behaved or carried on
Yeah.
that way because she knew that she was invited through me. But like
Yep.
because it was someone that was not, this sounds arrogant, but in that scenario, someone who was probably lower down the list on her, social
Yeah.
hierarchy level, and she was a social hierarchy girl who probably cares about that, she
Yep.
was going to start treating people differently based on where she thought they sat in that social hierarchy.
Right.
And I thought, like, you know, like looking back, I was like, I had no idea she was operating that way, but it was like, oh, like I've got to also be careful when you throw events. Like people will might treat you slightly differently to than if you're just a general person at rock. You know, I don't know.
Yep.
I don't know if that makes sense. Like there's like different levels of like different ways that people get treated, and it's trying to find the people who, oh, not trying to, but like trying to be fair with the people where it's like they would treat the waiter the same way as the CEO.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
I
but
I find myself personally, there are people I disagree with, even within our own group, who I don't want to hang out with, and I've learned through mistakes in the past, where I don't want to be as open with everyone about not
yeah,
liking that person, because I don't want my
course.
vision of that person to be bad, to affect their vision of that person, in case maybe I am wrong. Maybe it's just because I've seen the things that they've done in a different light, and
Yeah,
so I'm making them out to be a better person in my head. But I don't
yeah,
want to taint what someone else thinks of that person.
right.
But sometimes
Yeah.
I do make, an observation. I say, this is what I've been seeing happening.
Mm.
Um,
Uh,
yeah,
Yeah, it's hard. And then the next, like another level from that as well is almost like being able to not only slightly dislike this person, but like I've noticed I have a no, I've gotten way better at it. Like I used to be pretty bad, and I think everyone does. There's just that initial bias where, and it's even subtle things. Like maybe, all right, this sounds really stupid or
mm,
childish, but you guys are all discussing what you're gonna do for an adventure or a hangout soon,
yep,
and you and another person kind of go toe to toe. No, this idea. No, we'll leave at 3 a.m. No, we'll leave at 5 a.m. No,
yep,
and for whatever reason, your position wins.
yeah,
It's hard not to, from that point forward, keep an eye out for that person who got there. You know, not that their idea was worse or better or whatever, but
yep,
for whatever reason, they went with your idea. It's not rare to listen out for that person and watch them and try not to get angry when they do it,
yeah,
but having that person disagree with you the next time. Next time there's a chance for your opinion or someone else's
yeah,
opinion to come forward, they immediately jump on the other bandwagon just for the hell of it to be
yep,
like, "That was you because you said 5 a.m. and I said 3 a.m." You
yeah,
know what I mean? And it's like you see that and you're like, "This is going to come," and it's hard not to do that as well. Like to other people, like it's like, how do I make sure I don't start a weird silent war with that person where we're passive aggressively disagreeing? And it's like trying to take in. It's like that person, I might not get along with them all the time, but it's like sometimes they might have the opinion that I agree with in that situation, and I'm not.
mm.
It's hard. It's like I think there's people who will pick and they have that sheer violent loyalty, almost like vicious
Oh,
loyalty.
I will
And
admit full-heartedly I get like that over my own opinions. Like,
right,
if I was that 5 a.m. person and then we left
yeah,
at 3 or maybe say I was the 3 a.m. person and we left at
yeah,
5 a.m., there ended up being a roadblock, but that roadblock only happened at 4:30. And I think,
yeah,
fuck, I was clearly right, you idiot. Like I'll get in my own head about
yeah,
it instead of just accepting, this is what's happened.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and it
yeah.
could have happened to anyone at any time. I'm
Mm.
very guilty of that. And it's something I need to like work on as well.
Oh yeah, dude, don't we all? Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so easy as well. It's like, and it's not. It's sometimes even subconscious. Like we make excuses. We're very good essay writers, so we'll write up a whole reason in our head. No, this person could be wrong because blah blah blah. You know, anyone can
Mm,
find an excuse for any situation, but it's like
yeah.
trying to be like, you know what? No, like in this situation, even though I might even love this person, like I might even be Rochelle, and
Mm,
I'm like, yeah, but what Rochelle is saying isn't 100% true. This person is actually saying the correct thing, even though that person from my point of view can be a bit of a butthead at
yeah.
different points in time. It's like, I have to agree that this person, and it's hard, yeah, to remove it and try not to hold it from a historical standpoint where it's
Yeah.
like historically this happened. It's like trying to look at every new challenge or debate or whatever it is or situation is like a brand new one. So it's like,
Yeah.
if as an example, if people came and said, if there was an argument between two people, and I'm not saying that I'd ever be a mediator, but it's
Mm,
just like if you ever were in a situation where you're seeing an argument play out, or one person does something shitty to another person, I can't pick just the person I like more for the hell of it and believe that
yeah.
everything that they did is true and right, and the other person did everything wrong, and that
That's a
my
good
friend did
stance to
nothing wrong.
have.
Yeah, yeah,
To
and it's
not
hard.
have
It's freaking hard.
too much
Yeah,
loyalty.
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
toxic loyalty at least.
Toxic loyalty, yeah, yeah, blinded loyalty. Like
Yeah,
it's like I think sometimes you can even like your older brother, like you know what I mean. Like my older
yeah,
brother like loved me, but it's like you walk your friend away in that situation, and you tell them the thing that they probably need to hear in a calm and nonchalant way when you
mm,
by yourselves. But you kind of get them one on one and be like, hey, look, I don't think we made the best, probably wasn't the best call. And you know, try and explain it like
yeah,
not to be a and you know you can't do it. You can't do it condescendingly, and you have to pick your battles and stuff. There's friends where you just simply, I don't know if you're the
yeah,
same as mates, where it's like I just simply would never even try. You know, you just like it
yeah,
wouldn't even be that person just wouldn't want to hear it, and they wouldn't hear it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it
Or I wouldn't
happens.
even be the safe person to go. Yeah, I don't know that person well enough, and it's like I know that they probably. I wish someone would tell them that, but you can't. Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's
man.
hard. I mean, I've tried to mediate between fights in foster camps before, and it's
Yeah,
hard to not take a side when you like one person better. Like I
yes,
had kids, that were like, this person has been more doing the right thing all camp, and I have noticed that. And the other person, they just need to be heard. And it's hard to not take a stance and being like, look, the other one's clearly right. Like
yeah,
you've got to play out both situations and say, the
yeah,
goods and the bads of what happened, and get them to understand each other, because that's clearly where the problem actually is, not in the actual problem itself.
yeah.
Is people just need to be able to communicate better a little bit.
Yeah. No, no, I definitely agree. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's almost like you have to consistently monitor your subconscious thinking and be like, what am I subconsciously believing or thinking right now? And
Yeah.
try and learn to be very in tune with that. But oh man, I tell you, it is slipping hard. There's and even just yeah, different ways like even just the ways that different people express like love to each other. Like I have a friend and he's quite uh he's no, he's just he it's funny. He's we get along so flipping well,
Hmm.
and he seems to like me. Like he'll ask me to hang out quite regularly. And to me that's also another thing. Like to me asking to hang out means
Right.
we like each other.
Yeah.
Like do you know what I mean? Like if I yeah. But this guy yeah, he'll ask me to hang out fairly regularly and I'm like, yeah, sick. Yeah, this is awesome. But every single time, for whatever reason, after I hang out with him, and I'll invite him back and stuff,
Hmm.
but every time after I hang out with him, in my head, I'm like, I still feel like the guy doesn't like me that much. Or whenever I'm writing to him on Facebook, and I like him, but I'm like, every time I'm writing to this dude on Facebook or Messenger, I'm like, he's so laconic in the way that he writes. He'll write 2 word answers. Uh,
Yep.
but like, yeah, him, yeah, because we
Sounds
hang
like
out,
me
yeah,
sometimes, to be honest.
yeah, 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 and you're sitting there on the other end, like this all could have been like done, like like there's a comedian who says like, oh, when God, God could really clear up a lot with a 5 minute press conference. It's
Yeah.
the same with this. It's like this guy could call up and just be like, you could fix all this crap just by being the person that calls. But yeah, he's yeah, really lovely guy, and like, hey, yeah, he's asked me to hang out now like multiple times. It
Mm.
kind of reminds me of that is it how to base? No, not how to basic. Casually explained. You know, the casually explained guy.
Not off the
Ah,
top of my head.
he's
I've
just like
definitely heard it.
he's just like, oh, how to tell if a girl likes you, and it's like he goes through all these scenarios, and he's like, yeah, it gets to a point where he's like, she pushes you onto the bed, takes her clothes off, makes love to you, then you wake up the next day. Yeah, you still really don't know if she likes you, but like
Yeah.
goes through all the like it starts off like, passes you in a bar and like kind of keeps eye contact with you and then touches her hair and
Yeah.
accidentally touches your shoulder. And you're like, yeah, you don't know if she really likes you, but it's kind of like that same thing. It's like, I don't know. Like
Right.
I love no, but I do. I think he does like me, but he's just so different. Like I'm flamboyant and emotionally dynamic when I talk to people. So I go up and down, and so there's emotional response. You can
Mhm.
tell if I'm engaged or interested.
Yeah.
This guy's a little bit more like, just kind of talks in a very not monotone voice, but
Yeah.
pretty,
Okay.
yeah, less expression. And in the way he writes as well is less of the like zest in the conversation that kind of like like little words that or just like he'll be very flat and straight to the point.
Yep.
Done. One
Is
plus one equals two.
May I ask, is that person a typically Australian type of bloke, or someone from maybe somewhere else, or you wouldn't call them typically Australian?
I would say like yeah, typical Australian,
Right.
like a bit like semi like very 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 sociable and very cool when you hang out
Huh.
and people look up to him and stuff. Like a lovely dude, but it's just one of those yeah, I don't know, it's just
Because
a weird
I found recently, I was describing it to some viewers yesterday. while I was
Right.
playing with some Australian guys on Valorant. And everyone was arguing, but I knew it was in a funny way. They weren't aggressively arguing. And I was like, Australians really wear their heart in their voice as they talk sometimes.
Yeah.
You can tell it, but it sounds like arguing so often. So that's why I asked that. But it's interesting that he is a might be a typical like Australian guy that doesn't have
Yeah.
that, emotional response in the voice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it definitely is. It's like, yeah, it's like kind of like the dance where it's like you kind of both talk back and forward, and you can kind of get indications of how they're feeling, what they're.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I guess I'm not like heaps over the top with it. Like I'm not. I've heard some people that are like, "Hey guys, what's going on?" Blah, 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 blah," and they're like
Yeah.
really kind of a bit full on.
Yeah.
That I'll try to go up and down and show express. Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's another weird thing where I get in my head though, because I'm like
Mm,
weirdly like, well, I'll write back to someone if I like them, or I'll try to put in that effort where it's like kind of a equal thing. And plus, you've got so much output, so much energy to be like, hey, let's catch up.
yeah.
You have so much time, you just write to the people. If I know there's a 1 in 0.1 chance that you'll write back versus the person that generally writes back about 50-50, I'll
Yep.
go for 50-50 person. It's just quicker,
Yeah. Yeah. It's easier.
rather than getting it back by snail mail. um, dude, yeah. I feel like I wanted to. I feel like I wanted to say something else. I actually wrote some notes down. Oh, I wrote a note down that kind of related to some of our convos before.
Mm,
Um, but it's. I tried to find the person who actually said it, and then it's like it got popularized by this person. We don't really know who did it, but it kind of relates in a lot of the way to like some of the things that hold us back, the spotlight effect before, which is what I was saying, where you don't remember, you remember your embarrassing things, but you don't remember anyone else's embarrassing things from high school. But it says Will Rogers here, so we'll just quote him. But in
yep.
your 20s, you worry about what everyone thinks about you. In your 30s, you don't care anymore about what everyone thinks about you. And then in your 40s, you realize that nobody cared. Nobody cared about, like, nobody cared about you. Like, not in a brutal way, but like
Yeah.
nobody was thinking about all these moments where it's like, oh, like, am I gonna look stupid if I go
Yep.
in my even like it's something as small as like we're swimming at the beach. I didn't bring my board shorts, but it's a great day, and my mates are all going for a swim, and I'm sitting there on the sideline, and someone's like, "Hey, just go in your undies," and you're like, "Ah," but like and there's that weird thing in
We
your head. Oh,
had
not
that
really.
recently when I was at your house. I won't
Yeah,
mention the
right.
names of the people there, but I was like, look, I need to clean off underneath my board shorts, but I'm wearing underwear.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the people around me were like, look, just do that. And it took a little bit of, I'll admit, it took a bit of convincing that everyone was going to be okay with me doing that, but I did. I just ended up taking off the boardies in front of everyone.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but
It's
yeah,
true. No one remembers it. No one. It's almost weirder if you stand there going,
yeah, yeah. You
why,
make
why
more of a
not?
deal
That's
out
when
of it
people
that
kind of
way.
go, oh, this is a bit. But if you were just to like kind of, yeah, just run the water, like just like in your undies, no one's thinking about that after that situation. Like, and not in a bad way either. Like,
Yeah,
in some ways, some people might even look at you and be like, damn, I wish I had the confidence to do that.
yeah.
And it's like, it's never anyone's body or anything like that. You don't. And even if they did, it's like no one matters from that point forward. Yeah, I think we get stuck in this sphere of like everything's so important, and we will never know them. Like we will never know how good our lives. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm.
I find that quite. I always come back to it. Yeah, your 30s, you don't care. It's almost like a bit of a rebellious thing now. Well, fuck them. I'm gonna drink scotch at 2 a.m. on 2 p.m. on the in the boat. I don't care. And then it's like 40s, and I think there's different variations. Some people say in your 60s you realize nobody cared all along, but
I
yeah, I find that really helpful.
I agree with that, and I actually to touch on that, I want to mention the best teacher I ever had, and not the best person that was a teacher, but the best person at being a teacher that I ever had. Once said to our class, he said, "Look, you need to stop getting in your head about like how you're gonna look or what other people will think about you as you're doing something. And you just need to do what's right for you in the situation." He explained it as when he got out of high school, or when he was in high school, everyone wore their hat a certain way. Everyone wore their hat half on the head, half off the head, because that was the cool thing to do in school. Then he got out of school and he was doing that at TAFE. And then everyone around him were adults, and they were like, "Why are you doing that? Your hat's not on your head properly. Wear it properly." And he was like, "Oh shit! Like people don't care about how I look so much as just do what's right for you." And he explained that like, I was wearing my hat wrong, and I was only wearing a hat to be provided like uh safe from the sun, but I was doing it wrong for so long because that's what I thought other people would think would look cool, because that's what everyone around me did.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you just got to bite the bullet and just go, no, this is right for me.
Yeah.
And I find still to this day I struggle with that sometimes, and I'm trying to get better at being the person that can be made fun of.
Mm.
I will happily be made fun of if it makes the situation better or if it's more fun.
Yeah.
Or even just making a dumb mistake and admitting, yeah, I made the dumb mistake.
Yeah.
Because it's better for me to do that than to think, oh, I'm just a cool guy, I didn't make a mistake, whatever, and ignoring it. And
Mm.
I kind of regret in school where there were situations where I didn't try my hardest at, say, dancing or something in school because I didn't want to look weird or cringy in front of the girls. I wanted to look cool and mysterious or whatever. And sure, it might have worked for me, but then I never learned how to dance, and now I look like an idiot
Yes.
because if we go out
Yes.
dancing, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is the best way to look at it. Yeah. Or like even yeah, no, the dancing thing is huge, and it's like just have fun. Like
yeah,
Rochelle, I've tried to embrace it a little bit more. But I used to like Rochelle. I still feel like I dance like an idiot, and it does still like get on my nerves sometimes, or freak me out a little bit because I
mm,
want to go and dance, and I'm like, oh, we'll be. I think that's why I'm not as attracted to clubbing as some other people.
yep,
But I just learned it. I was just like, I'm just gonna dance like an absolute buffoon. And Rochelle said she loves like
yeah,
Rochelle and her friends love that. They're like, oh my god, this is what we want. Like we want you just to be like because apparently I started off trying. I was like, all right, I'll watch YouTube videos and try and step at the right time. I
I've
was like,
done the
it's just
same.
not working. Yeah, it's not working. And then I was like, I'm just gonna like absolutely go friggin' troppo. And they loved it. Like it was like they were like,
That's
oh yeah,
beautiful.
and they're all filming it and stuff and like laughing and they're like, no,
Yeah,
like you look like you're having a good time. And I was like, I am having a good time. When I was trying to do this routine thing, it didn't. It felt like you know what I mean. It
yeah,
felt like
yeah. No, I
unre-
agree.
it felt structured and
I
it felt
think
like it was
people
very rehearsed.
also have a better appearance when they are having a good time, or when they're happy, or when
Yeah.
they're doing something they're more knowledgeable at, than
Mm,
trying to look cool. Because when you're trying
yeah.
to look cool, I think we've gotten used to being able to see that and spot that out in people and being like, look, that's not actually cool. I
Right.
think
Yeah.
it's something that we need to get better at accepting. We can't be cool all the time. We've got to be an idiot so that we can do something better later.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and that dancing thing is perfect for that, because I tried to look cool when everyone else was learning how to dance, and then
Yeah.
I look like an idiot now if I go out somewhere and try to dance.
Dude.
Just
Yeah.
stand there still.
I can I'd love to read you some paragraphs from this. They're not long, just a couple
Yeah,
of sentences
yeah,
long.
absolutely.
It's so yeah, this is exactly what we were just talking about, and it relates a lot to. I'm going to skip a few of the paragraphs just for time's sake, 'cause it goes for a while. But I'm just going to
Fair
read a
enough.
few. So um, I'm just skipping two paragraphs here. Enjoy the power and beauty of your youth. Oh, never mind. You will not understand the power and beauty of your youth until they've faded. But trust me, in 20 years, you look
Mm,
back at photos of yourself and recall in a way you can't grasp now how much possibility lay before you and how fabulous you really looked. You are
mm,
not as fat as you imagine. Don't waste your time on jealousy. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind. The race is long, and in the end, it's only with yourself. Remember compliments you receive, forget the insults. If you succeed in doing this, tell me how. Keep your old love letters, throw away your old bank statements. Don't feel guilty don't feel guilty if you don't know what you want to do in life. The most interesting people I know didn't know at 22 what they wanted to do with their lives. Some of the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't. Um, Oh yeah, maybe you'll marry, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll have children, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll divorce at 40. Maybe you'll dance the funky chicken on your 75th wedding anniversary. Whatever you do, don't congratulate yourself too much or berate yourself either. Your choices are half chance, so are everybody else's. This is the part I was going to say.
mm,
Sorry, I started reading a bit ahead. I read a few paragraphs beforehand, but Enjoy your body, use it every way you can. Don't be afraid of it or what other people think of it. It's the greatest instrument you'll ever own. Dance, even if you have nowhere to do it but your own living room. Read the directions, even if you don't follow them. Do not read beauty magazines; they will only make you feel ugly. This is a very like long. I just wanted
Yeah.
to read those bits and stuff, but that was that Baz Luhrmann speech. He's
I
actually,
really like that.
I
I
think
really
he,
like the idea he presents around comparing to other people.
you, you
The
know what?
race. Sorry, yeah.
He is the director of your favorite
I
movie.
know, I
He's
know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, The Great Gatsby.
I
Yeah, it's Baz
actually
Luhrmann.
met people that have met him. I know that's a stupid
Wow.
thing to say.
Sorry, I just made that connection then. I remember I asked you a while ago on a camping trip. I was like, "Oh, what's your favorite movie?" And then I watched it and I was like, Baz Luhrmann. And yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I just thought that was a cool link. It was like, I know you love his work already. So
You mentioned
yeah,
something great in there, which was you you're only in a race against yourself, I think was the line. Um,
yeah,
that's so fucking awesome to me because it stands very true. If you compare yourself to the people around you, you'll only lose to them. If you compare yourself to the people above you, you'll always be below them. If you compare yourself to people below you or who you perceive to be below you, you'll always lose the fact that you can only compare yourself to them. But if you're comparing yourself to yourself in the past, you can always be a winner in that situation.
yeah,
I think that's actually really cool. I don't think about that enough. Is I compare myself sometimes to what I could have been, and I'll
yeah,
always lose to that person because in my imagination I could have been anything. But realistically, I need to compare myself now to the person I was yesterday and see what improvements I've made, and that can force me to push more decisions and make better and more strong decisions for my life moving forward as well. I think that's really cool. I really like that little excerpt there.
yeah, dude. Yeah, it's one I keep coming back to. I think it's perfect for us, like especially at this age when you get out of school and it's kind of like, all right, you got to front it. Like obviously we say get out of school. We've been out of school for 5 or 6 years now,
Mm.
which is always scary to say out loud. But you're
Yeah.
like, I think we feel like we're still kind of quite. Yeah, I don't know. I still feel maybe I still feel physically young, but also I still feel young. Like I feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I still will go quiet when an adult talks in the room to listen to you. Know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's still that like sense
Yeah.
of like, and then I realize, hang on, I'm one of the. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's until when I'm like when I'll be older than a lot of the general people, like that I'm kind of talking to at work and stuff, that I'll
Mm.
feel a lot more like
But
an
I
adult
don't think
then.
it's once you
But
reach a
still,
certain age either. I think it's once
yeah,
you reach a certain mental capacity for not caring um
yeah,
about that is that's when it changes for you. I've had that situation in the past, but only in certain situations, where I won't care what someone else thinks about me when I was a waiter and I was giving information about something about the house I lived in or wherever it was
yeah,
or what I was presenting for people. But then if I was suddenly in a different room of people who were more knowledgeable than me, then I suddenly cared a lot more what they thought about me because I wanted to give a good impression. I think it changes a lot depending on what your perception of yourself is in that situation.
yeah,
Um, then you become someone that can give those opinions and speak up against someone who you may have earlier perceived to be smarter than you, so you didn't want to say anything against them, even if you thought you had a different idea. Um,
yeah,
I've definitely found that in the past, at least myself.
yeah. And sometimes saying stupid things to smart people can be kind of a refresher because
Mm,
there's like that quote. It's like uh, look like you know something like you can look like an idiot for a few seconds by asking a dumb question, or you can be an idiot forever by never asking it in the first place.
yeah, yeah, that's
And
very
it's
true.
like, we sit there and we kind of plague over. What if I look like a fool? So almost even sometimes like being intimidated by like people who will be well more like way more knowledgeable about you or way more knowledgeable about certain topics,
Yep.
and you hang out with them and you're like, oh crap, I am out of my depth. And it's like, no, I've got to hang out with those guys more
Yeah,
often. Like that
yeah,
discomfort is a good thing. Like it means that I've got some place. I'm in the deep end now. Like I love
yeah.
talking to Ryan about finance.
Mm,
Because he and Arthur, because like they have all of that knowledge about um
yeah,
finance and stuff like that, and you'll be able to sit there and be like, oh, like tell me more. And obviously they'll often say, oh, look, there's this thing about YouTubers, like watch this YouTuber. And I'm not going to like take everything they say as gospel, but it's a good thing to have those friends that are interested in it. And if I
yeah.
become more interested in. I have those friends who have those, areas of expertise, or not necessarily 100% honed in right now. Like they might not be
Mm.
they might not be the greatest of all time. They might still be learning and stuff, but they still have more knowledge about me than me, and that's a start. And it's
Yeah.
being like, look, because I think sometimes we go straight to like go to the university lecturer, and it's like I can't find a lecturer
Yeah.
right now. Like, you're the best person in the room who can tell me about this. Break it down to me.
Yeah.
I
There's
love. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you go.
there's an idea a lot of people have in their head that using someone is such a bad thing, but using someone as a reference or a material can be such a good thing, in such a positive way if it's done right. There are people that we know that are more knowledgeable than us at other things, and if we use them and utilize the knowledge they have and push past and don't make the mistakes that they made getting there, we can even become better than them in the future at knowing something, or we might be able to help them or work with them, or be someone that can be useful to them as well, moving forward, because
Yeah.
we can push each other forward. We can make it so much better by doing that. I find
Yeah.
that myself with blacksmithing. I am I still have so much to learn, and I constantly am asking questions to my mentor. But then I've got
Mm.
another friend that I've gotten into blacksmithing outside of the group, and every so often he'll ask me questions, and I'm like, hold on, am I somehow his mentor? Like, and I haven't realized it.
Yeah.
But then we work on things together, and we would never have done that if he just sat there and didn't believe in me, or didn't utilize the information I had to give him, or utilize the mistakes I had already made before him.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah, I think
it's
it's
really
really good
true.
to use people as references, even if, in previous years people have used it as something to look down upon when you use someone, but it can be healthy and positive if it's done in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think have you heard of that thing on Reddit? It's called "Explain It to Me Like I'm 5."
No, no, that sounds cool.
No,
I like that.
it's one of the threads, but I feel like that's a really good way where it's kind of like leave your ego at the door.
Yeah.
Like, I've got this thing, I'm not understanding it. Tell me, might be
Mm.
like NFTs, and they'll do explain it like I'm 5, and you'll go into NFTs, and people explain it, and they just break it down in like, because I think sometimes there's even like a way about us where it's like, I'm worried that someone will ask me a question, and it's like I don't want to break it down. I break it down in the way when I break it down to someone, I break it down in the way that I
Mm.
think of it or learn from it. It's the easiest way that I can.
Yep.
But that's kind of and I'm bad at doing it in multiple ways. And sometimes I think like taking the ego away and just be like, explain it like I'm 5. Like
Yeah.
tell me why this happens, what's going on here, how's this happening? Like it work and even I was reading this book called The Barefoot Investor, and
Mm.
in one point he was talking about one of the best investors and financial planners that he knows in the country. And this guy has his favorite line is saying stopping, like he'll talk to anyone and he plays it like he's a bit dumb. Like it sounds stupid, but he plays
Yeah.
it like he's a little bit stupid. And he goes, I'm having a little bit of trouble here understanding this particular thing. Sorry, mate, I'm a bit slow. Can you just re-explain everything you just kind of did? Because they'll talk in this fight, and
Yep.
he's actually pulled people who are trying to swindle him a bit. Like they're trying to talk him into a deal.
Yeah.
And then he'll just come out at the end and be like, yeah, look, I'm not really liking this. So you said this. This is how much money I have to spend.
Yeah.
This is how much you're going to be making. This is where we're going to, and he will break it all down. But he's kind of played this idiot at the start,
Yep.
plays this idiot character, so he can really find out more about, you know what I mean? And then like
Yeah.
see if he's see if they're trying to take advantage of him. He'll ask them questions or mess up words that he clearly knows, but he'll call it other things or get things wrong on purpose to see how they treat him
Yeah.
when they think that they have someone that like they could kind of take for a
Yeah.
bit of a fool and take for a bit of a ride. And I don't know, I found that really, it's a different way to look at it, and it's like not necessarily to that extent. It's not like you're always being scammed, but like in a situation, being like, no, mate, can you just explain what you're talking about in a
Yeah.
different? You can really, even if it's just like something as stupid as like, even small talk, like as dumb as it is. Like there was a guy who I knew who did like he spray paint cars, and it was
Yep.
just like, like he'd spray paint art on them too. And I was like, what's the weirdest thing you've ever had to do? And he's like, oh, dude, I have to do like the Southern Cross all the time. I've had the most beautiful cars, and I'm putting the most disgusting paint jobs, and like just showing me some of the photos. It was a funny combo, and then
Yeah.
I was like, I liked that answer. And now next time I meet someone who spray paints cars, I'm going to ask them that same question again. Because
Yeah.
it's like for a different like small talk. I was like, oh yeah, now I met this guy. He had to draw a penis on like a Commodore a few months ago. You know what I mean? Like you have
Yeah.
that weird small bit of gem of sorry, not podcast, small talk that you
Yeah.
can like kind of bounce off of. But
I
yeah, man.
wanted to hint at something you said, and the counter side of it is when you're the person that has more information than someone, or
Mm,
clearly has the better knowledge, and you know that in your head, um, we need to be able to be people as well that don't have that ego and are
yeah,
willing to help people. There's a saying, I want to get it right, but it's something along the lines of, if I had to explain it to you, you wouldn't understand. And that belittles two people. It belittles the person you're speaking to, that they have no ability to understand or learn new things, and it
yeah,
belittles yourself in that you don't have the ability to help
capacity.
someone
Yeah,
else and to to explain it properly. I think it's such a shit way of looking at life, is that way, is you need to be able to help people. You've got to not have this ego that, no, I'm better, I'm not going to give you the information I have. You need to be able to try to prop up other people around you and help build society to be something greater in the future.
yeah,
But yeah, I think it's just an important part of life that so many people have this idea that if they know a secret that's going to help people at life, that they are only going to tell people they really like, rather than tell everyone, and then life will be better for everyone.
yeah. No, I agree. I think having that kind of thing where it's like, even just like yeah, it's almost like a transaction's the wrong word, but it's like everyone knows something we don't, and it can come from any age group at any time. So it's almost like a like when you shout a mate a drink, and you're like, I know he'll probably get me next time, or
Yeah.
when he's in a situation, or if he was in my situation, he'd do the exact same thing. He may never be in the same situation again where it's like this particular thing happens, but it's like.
Mm.
I'll give you this knowledge, and at some point, I'll have a dumb question to bounce off of you. You know what I mean? I'll be like, "Hey, with cars, like
Yeah.
I have a friend. Yeah, he's way into cars. I'm not a car dude, so
Yep.
it's like, but we have such a good friendship that it's like if I ever have a question about cars, he can always come over to me, and I'll ask him, and he will sometimes even drive over and help. It's just so kind, and it's like
Yeah.
I got to learn more of those types of skills because I want to be able to be the person who can kind of help him out with stuff. But yeah, at some point it's almost like I'll get you back at some point, you'll get me back, or you do the same for me, or you'll
Yeah.
probably help someone else at some point with something. You know what I mean? It's like, or even just showing kindness. It's like you may not even, but it's like you'll be kind to me or kinder to me, because you'll remember this. But it is true. It's funny because it's like not getting a big head, but also not getting a like. There's some people who almost be a little bit like if they don't want to ask for help, and when
Yeah.
they finally do have to ask for help, it's such a burden to them that they almost make it like, I'm not like, I'm not to look up to or anything. I just wanted to quit. You know what I mean? It's like, look, I'm just helping you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I didn't like I have a friend. He's a car dude, a few friends now, and there's been awkward situations where I like to go kayaking sometimes or go stand up paddleboarding, and I need to
Yep.
put the kayaks on my roof, and there's these like straps that you need to put on, and you can kind of clink them up, and there's actually a lot, like not heaps to them, but there's a bit to them,
Yep.
and
I
the
just want to touch on
more,
that later as well.
sorry,
I just
oh
want
yeah.
to touch on that later. Just keep it in mind.
Oh no, that's okay.
Anyway, yeah.
There's a few situations where I jokingly start off, but eventually I do get frustrated. And it's happened
Yeah.
about 3 times now, where I'm sitting there, I put my straps up, and the guy insists to help. And he's like, "No, I'm going to help with you. I'm going to help you." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks, man." And he's trying to help me, and I've tried to re-explain like this is something I do
Yep.
once every 6 months. It took me a while to learn it, but it's not even a big deal. Like we could go and be doing other adventures now,
Mm.
and you're sitting there I don't need like I'm loving your help right now, but it'd be more helpful if maybe you went and I don't know, like just don't be right here. Like I'm doing these straps, I know how to do them, and they'll generally every single time like stuff it up in some monumental way. Like the last time I got back to my house and like I was taking them off, and like one of the straps basically came off, like very very like it could have flown off the road at any moment, like in my
Yep.
kayaks and stuff, which would have been really bad. It's like there's things where it's like I won't take control and I'm pretty cruisy. Like if we're in a night out and you're like, oh, we're going afterwards. Are we going home? We going here? I don't care. Like I'm in a vibe mode. I'll float
Mm.
wherever. But that was one of those. That's one of those situations where it's like I'm asking if I can. Like I'm asking as the helper this time, like the person with the experience. I'm also being denied like that. That for whatever reason they
Yeah.
just like it's happened a few times, and I'm like, bro, like just let me do it. And they don't like it because they'll tangle it up. Then
Yeah.
I'm like we both cold right now. We're both wet after being kayaking. Like maybe we just like I don't know. Well, I'll just jump on this one. I'll do it this time. If we ever want to do it, we can do it in a semi-controlled environment, or when we have some more time, or maybe on the way to the place, like we can sit down. But right now we're like, it's getting late. It's getting dark. Like let's get home. Like
Yeah.
And it's hard not to have that weird chip on your shoulder after. And I've had it before as well, where I've been reprimanded or I've been kind of pulled up because I'm about to do something, and someone like kind of comes up and goes, if you do that, the back of your trailer is going to jack or whatever it is. Someone will walk up and give that advice, and you're like kind of like, oh, I was flying a drone at a wedding, and I was flying it over some of the people, and apparently that's a big thing you're not meant to do. It's a massive no. And some guy he's like, I used to work for Case, or like
Huh.
civil aviation blah 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 authority. You're not meant to fly them directly over people. And it was like having not a go at me, but he was trying to do that. Like, it was basically giving me some good advice, but I was also in that mood where I was like, I don't want to hear it. Right?
Yeah.
Weird. But yeah. Sorry, you were going to say something relating to that. Yeah.
No, actually, I was going to say something relating to kayaking. Sorry, I know it's completely off
No,
topic,
no,
but at
it's
least
okay.
as something I guess lighter to go towards the
Yeah.
end of the podcast in, is I saw something perfect while I was at the shops the other day. I won't mention what store, but it rhymes with Kathmandu, and but they had these kayaks, one for beaching, one for lake. I don't know what the difference is personally, but they're like this plasticky cardboard material, and they kind of fold up, and they
Right.
were saying how strong they are and everything, and they were on sale at the time. I thought of you immediately when I saw it. I was like, Reese would love this thing. So you don't have to tie it down to the roof of a small car
Oh
all the
yeah.
time. It'll fold up, it pulls out, and it's got the strength to be like you're withstanding the waves at the beach and stuff like that. I was like, man, this
Yeah.
would love
Wow.
this. I just thought I'd mention it really quickly,
Yeah.
in case
Heck
you wanted
yeah.
to look into it at all.
Yeah, man, that'd be awesome. I've been I've played a game with the kayaks, unfortunately, because I was saying to Rochelle when I
Mm.
initially bought them, I was like, I'm kind of that's where I'm a bit of a satisfier. Like even with cameras or anything big,
Yep.
I'll often kind of buy it, and then I'm like, if I use this enough that I can justify buying it, then I'll get the next one. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It sounds really weird, but it's like because I
No, I get
remember my
that.
dad bought me a GoPro, and I basically said to Dad, look, like Dad's like, well, I bought you this GoPro, like you better use it. And I used to see so many GoPros just not being used, and I said,
Yeah.
Dad, if it doesn't fall apart in my hands, I'll never buy a camera again. Like if I don't use this
Yeah.
GoPro until it's solidly falling apart because I've taken it, and I took it so many places. We
Yeah,
jump
we
off
used to
rocks, we
film
go
videos all
skating
the time.
all the time. Yeah. And it was like, okay, I can justify this Christmas present that we bought. And then I was like, all right, well, I can kind of work my way up. And it's the same with the kayaks. They're just in that range now where I'm like, we use them enough and we enjoy them so much, but I just don't think I use them enough to
That's
be like,
fair.
I'm going to get the next one. But I
That
will
is
keep an
fair
eye out
and
for them.
honest with yourself to be able to
Yeah,
admit that as well.
I'm trying to gut it, but I'm like, okay, this is one of those things. Where it's like, yeah, because I've looked at the kayaks too, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so good. But it's like, I think we live right on the lake where we are.
Yeah,
I think
that's true. You
we're
don't have
probably
to
going,
travel.
yeah. If I'm lucky, maybe 3 times this year on the lake, which is cool, but it's like not as much as we should.
Yeah.
For the amount that we
You're
spend.
maybe 4 meters from it,
Yeah. So, sorry, I just wanted to quickly do some. Did you still want to talk about electric cars? I just noticed you wrote electric cars.
I
Or is that another
wanted,
time? Do you want
yeah,
to?
I think that's for another time. It is a big
Sure.
topic I want to hit at.
Heck yeah. No, I'm in for that. I know, yeah, because I noticed the. Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to. I have a feeling I might know a little bit of where you're talking about. What you're talking about with that. So that's awesome. Staying healthy. Were there any other topics that you wanted to touch on today, or?
Yeah, just quickly, before we
Yeah.
end, something light, something quick. I just wanted to mention, I don't know if you've had this experience, a lot of your YouTube experiences on computer, if it's on phone or if it's on your TV. For me, it's on computer. And they've recently introduced a feature called Hoverplay, I'm calling it Hoverplay, which is as you hover over a video when you go to click it, it starts playing the video. This
Oh.
has pissed me off immensely because recently, every time I go to quickly click on a video, what happens
Yeah.
is it just starts hover playing, so it doesn't actually click into the video, and it fucking drives me insane. Or if I just want to like get information on the video, I'll hover over it usually, and it'll start playing it. I'm like, no, I don't want to watch it. But then it adds it to your watch history because you've hover
Oh,
played.
what?
Yeah.
Really?
And it's got those red bars of like where you got up to. It's like, fuck, this is
Oh my
annoying.
Goodness, I didn't know
Yeah.
it was putting it in your watch.
Yeah.
Watch history.
It happens
Wow.
to me all the time. It happens on the phone as well. If you like tap and hold on one for a little bit too long as you're scrolling, and it'll start playing the video, and I'm like, no, I didn't want this in my watch history. Like, it's so dumb. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's hectic. Man, I didn't know put it into your history. That's yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it annoys the
I
shit out of me.
do you reckon? I wonder. Like, I think I have a bad habit. I usually find the average is somewhere in between. Like, I'm not totally dystopian. Like, government's putting fluoride in, trying to kill us and stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are situations where I'm like, oh, like there are some, that to me that's one of those things where it's like if it's hover playing, it's like I feel like that's almost like an attention loop where it's like it's got your attention. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like, oh, next video plays. Oh, look, I can kind of see it without playing. Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
click into it. It makes dude. This helps. It just helps with those YouTube rabbit holes.
Yeah, yeah, rabbit holes are way too easy, and they're just making them easier. I
Yeah.
guess it's part of their business, but yeah,
Mm.
too easy.
The way I try to justify it is I don't know if you do the same. I speed YouTube videos up by like 2.
I do it when I'm listening to something for information, which I probably shouldn't
Yeah.
do, but I know that I can get the information quicker, and people
Oh
talk
no,
very
I
slowly.
do it all the time. Yeah. I justify it because these Americans would just be like,
Yeah, exactly. I get it with
talking for
Americans all the time.
and then it'll be like, oh no, I think it's like 3 minutes in generally, like because it didn't help. YouTube did that thing where it's like you only get paid for ad revenue after the 10-minute mark. Apparently, I don't know if that's still the case
No, that's
now.
yeah,
But it
that's
was.
absolutely a thing.
So it's like now people like basically like it's like basically like walking up to someone with a cup of cordial and be like, tell me when to stop with the water. And they have like the optimal place where it's like that's when you stop pouring the water, and they just keep pouring, and then it
Yeah.
starts overflowing out of their hand, and they're making eye contact with you still, just pouring water into this cup that has no cordial left in it, and you're sitting there going, "Where's the fucking substance? Sorry, where's the substance? Not."
Yeah.
What is this? It just tastes like water. Like what is there? Like one
There's
drip of like cordial left? Like that's what
PewDiePie used
happens
to
with
do
these
it,
YouTube
and he would just leave the end of his video blank
I
up
think that's a
until
good
the
practice.
time.
Oh, because it creates a world where it's like, things that should be quick and easy, where knowledge is power. Like, where you're wanting to
Yeah.
learn. It's like, I don't know, it just makes it so much less impactful.
And I'd
for me
rather
when it
watch a
comes to
3-minute video on how to do something than a 10-minute
heck
video
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah. I think it there's this like the governor Pericles in ancient Greece
Mm.
he was a governor, and he'd have to do a lot of like conversations, and he'd walk up and show himself in front of like the audience and whatnot, and talk to the local forums and whatnot. But he made a habit of only talking on very specific. He wasn't laconic. He talked.
Oh, I've
really
heard of this. Yeah. So it'd make it
only
very
talk on a
important
big
when he
thing.
spoke.
Yeah. So when he came, it was like everyone would be sprinting to the town center because it's like Pericles is talking, Pericles is
Yeah.
talking, and he'd make sure that advisors would speak on his behalf when it wasn't as important. But
Mm.
subconsciously, people would hear his name, they'd see him, and they'd link him to like important shit happens when we see this guy. Like he's
Yep.
associated with the important stuff. And I don't know, these YouTube channels, like it kind of takes away from people having that power. You know what I mean? Like being able to have that punch where it's
Mm.
like, this is the essay that I wrote. Like people write perfect essays, and then it's like, but it doesn't go for 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it go for 10 minutes now. Okay, how do we do this?
I
Yeah,
mean,
it's-
two
I
of
don't
my
know.
favorite channels, they only produce videos and it's not frequent at all. It's like maybe every month or so, or maybe it could be
Yeah.
every couple months. But then when the video comes out, it's like, damn, that's a banger. Like
Yeah.
they spent more time on it, and they made it more important. They didn't have to hit a 10-minute mark. They just hit all the points they wanted to hit, and they ended the video where it needed to be ended.
Where it needed to be ended. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's perfect to do it
Mm.
that way. And I think I need to strive for that if I'm going to be making videos in the future as well, which I fully plan to.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Heck yeah. Are you gonna make this into a video?
I will absolutely. I was just thinking about it. We have
Heck
went
yeah.
well over our 1.5 hour mark.
I know. We didn't even
Um,
touch it. I'm just looking at the list of things we could, and we barely even tried to get a list. Like we just kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
we'll just see, Holy dooly. All right. Well,
Well-
thanks so much for having me on the podcast, man. Oh, sorry. Did you have
It is
something else?
Been my pleasure. I just wanted to say bye to everyone, and then we'll end call afterwards. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you for Lost Sword for the follows, Squinty for the follow, and A Dash of Luck, that's Arthur, for the Prime sub. And everyone else who's joined into chat as well. Thank you so much. You've made that much more enjoyable. Goodbye everyone. Hope you had a nice time.